Hi there! Welcome to Joiful Stories. It's a great day to read a chapter book together. Are you ready? Awesome! Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Today we are going to read a chapter book, The Boy in the Dress. Are you ready? Let's begin. Chapter 1. No Hugging. Dennis was different. When he looked in the mirror, he saw an ordinary 12-year-old boy, but he felt different. His thoughts were full of color and poetry, though his life could be very boring. The story I'm going to tell you begins here, in Dennis's ordinary house in an ordinary street in an ordinary town. His house was nearly exactly the same as all the others in the street. One house had double glazing, another did not. One had a gravel drive, another had crazy paving. One had a Vauxhall Cavalier in the drive, another a Vauxhall Astra. Tiny differences that only really pointed out the sameness of everything. It was also ordinary. Something extraordinary just had to happen. Dennis lived with his dad, who did have a name, but Dennis just called him Dad, so I will too. And his older brother John, who was 14. Dennis found it frustrating that his brother would always be 2 years older than him, and bigger and stronger. Dennis's mom had left home a couple of years ago. Before that, Dennis used to creep out of his room and sit at the top of the stairs and listen to his mom and dad shout at each other until one day the shouting stopped. She was gone. Dad banned John and Dennis from ever mentioning Mom again, and soon after she left, he went around the house and took down all the photographs of her and burnt them in a big bonfire. But Dennis managed to save one. One solitary photograph escaped the flames, dancing up into the air from the heat of the fire before floating through the smoke and onto the hedge. As dusk fell, Dennis snuck out and retrieved the photo. It was charred and blackened around the edges, and at first his heart sank. But when he turned it to the light, he saw the image was as bright and clear as ever. It showed a joyful scene. A younger John and Dennis with Mom at the beach. Mom wearing a lovely yellow dress with flowers on it. Dennis loved that dress. It was full of color and life, and soft to the touch. When Mom put it on, it meant that summer had arrived. It had been warm outside after she had left, but it hadn't really been summer in their house again. In the picture, Dennis and his brother were in swimming trunks holding ice cream cones, vanilla ice cream smeared around their smiling mouths. Dennis kept the photo in his pocket and looked at it secretly every day. His mom looked so achingly beautiful in it, even though her smile was uncertain. Dennis stared at it for hours on end, trying to imagine what she had been thinking when it was taken. After Mom left, Dad didn't say much, but when he did, he would often shout. So Dennis ended up watching a lot of television, and especially his favorite show, Trisha. Dennis had seen a Trisha episode about people with depression and thought maybe his dad had that. Dennis loved Trisha. It was a daytime talk show where ordinary people were given the opportunity to talk about their problems or yell abuse at their relatives, and it was all presided over by a kindly-looking but judgmental woman conveniently called Trisha. For a while, Dennis thought life without his mom would be some kind of adventure. He'd stay up late, eat takeaways, and watch rude comedy shows. However, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months and the months turned into years, he realized that it wasn't an adventure at all. It was just sad. Dennis and John sort of love each other in that way, and that they had to because they were brothers. But John tested his love quite often by doing things he thought were funny, like sitting on Dennis's face and farting. If farting had been an Olympic sport, at the time of writing I'm told it isn't, which I feel is a shame, he would have won a number of gold medals and probably received a knighthood from the Queen. Now, reader, you might be thinking that as their mom had left, the two brothers would be brought closer together. Sadly, it only drove them apart. Unlike Dennis, John was full of silent rage with his mom for leaving and agreed with Dad that it was better never to mention her again. It was one of the rules of the house. No talking about Mom. No crying. And worst of all, no hugging. Dennis, on the other hand, was just full of sadness. Sometimes he missed his mom so much that he cried in bed at night. He tried to cry as quietly as possible because he and his brother shared a room, and he didn't want John to hear. But one night, Dennis's sobs woke John up. "Dennis? Dennis, what are you crying for now?" demanded John from his bed. "I don't know. It's just, well, I just wish that Mom was here and everything," came the reply from Dennis. "Well, don't cry. She's gone and she's not coming back." "You don't know that." "She's never coming back, Dennis. Now stop crying. Only girls cry." But Dennis couldn't stop crying. The pain ebbed and flowed inside him like the sea, crashing down on him, almost drowning him in tears. He didn't want to upset his brother, though, so he cried as quietly as he possibly could. So why was Dennis so different, I hear you ask? After all, this boy lived in an ordinary house, in an ordinary street, in an ordinary town. Well, I'm not going to tell you why yet, but the clue might be in the title of this book. Chapter 2. Fat Dad. Dennis's dad jumped up and down and shouted with joy. Then he pulled Dennis into a tight hug. 2-0, he said. "We showed him, eh, son?" Yes, I know I said there was no hugging in Dennis's house, but this was different. It was football. In Dennis's house, talking about football was easier than talking about feelings. He, John, and Dad all loved football, and together shared the highs, and more often, lows, of supporting their local third division team. But as soon as the match finished and the referee blew his whistle, it was as if that sound also signaled a return to their strict no-hugging policy. Dennis did miss being hugged. His mom had hugged him all the time. She was so warm and soft. He loved being held by her. Most children can't wait to grow up and get bigger, but Dennis missed being small and being picked up by his mother. It was in her arms that he had felt most safe. It was a shame Dennis's dad hardly ever hugged him. Fat people are good at hugs. They're nice and soft, like a big comfy sofa. Oh yes, didn't I mention? Dad was fat. Really fat. Dad worked as a long-distance lorry driver, and all that sitting down and driving had taken its toll, only stretching his legs to go to the service station cafe and eat various combinations of eggs, sausage, bacon, beans, and chips. Sometimes after breakfast, Dad would eat 2 packets of crisps. He just got fatter and fatter after Mom left. Dennis had seen a Trisha episode about a man called Barry who was so fat he couldn't wipe his own bum. The studio audience were told about his daily food intake and oohed and awed with a strange mixture of delight and horror. Then Trisha asked him, "Barry, does the fact that you have to get to your mom or dad to wipe your underneath not make you want to lose weight?" "Trisha, I just love me food," was Barry's smirking reply. Trisha put it to Barry that he was comfort eating. Trisha was good with phrases like that. She had, after all, been through a lot of difficult times herself. Barry cried a bit at the end, and as the credits rolled, Trisha smiled sadly and gave him a hug, though it was hard for her to really get her arms around Barry as he was the size of a small bungalow. Dennis wondered whether his dad was comfort eating too, having one more sausage or a slice of fried bread at breakfast to, in Trisha's words, fill the emptiness inside. But he didn't dare share that thought with his dad. Dad wasn't keen on Dennis watching the show anyway. He said, "It's just for girls, that." Dennis dreamed of one day having his own Trisha episode with the title, My Brother's Farts Smell Well Bad, or My Dad Has a Chocolate Hobnob Problem. Daddy ate a whole packet of the admittedly more-ish biscuits every day when he got home from work. So when Dennis, his dad, and John played football, Dad would always go in goal because he was so fat. He liked it because it meant he didn't have to run around that much. The goal was an upturned bucket and an empty beer keg, a remnant from a long-forgotten barbecue they once had when Mom was still around. They didn't have barbecues anymore. These days they had battered sausages from the local chippy or bowls of cereal even when it wasn't breakfast. What Dennis loved most about playing football with his family was that he was the best. Even though his brother was 2 years older, Dennis could run rings around him in the garden, tackling, dribbling, and scoring with great skill. And it wasn't like it was easy to get the ball past his dad, not because Dad was good in goal. It was just that he was so big. On Sunday mornings, Dennis used to play football for his local club. He dreamed of being a professional footballer, but after his mom and dad split up, he stopped going. He had always relied on his mom to give him a lift. Dad couldn't take him as he was forever driving up and down the country and his lorry trying to make ends meet. So, Dennis's dream floated quietly away. Dennis did play football for his school though, and was his team's number one shooter? Sorry, reader. I must look this up. Striker. Yes, Dennis was his team's number one striker, scoring over 1 million goals in a year. Excuse me again, reader. I don't know much about football. Maybe 1 million is too much. 1,000? 100? 2? Whatever. He scored the most goals. As a result, Dennis was incredibly popular with his teammates, except the captain, Gareth, who picked Dennis up on every little mistake on the pitch. Dennis suspected that Gareth was jealous of him because he was a better footballer. Gareth was one of those boys who are unusually large for their age. In fact, you wouldn't be surprised to find he was really 5 years older than everyone else in his year, but had just been held back on account of being a bit thick. Once, Dennis was off school with a really bad cold on a match day. He had just finished watching the day's Trisha, a gripping episode about a woman who discovered she was having an affair with her own husband. Then he was looking forward to some Heinz tomato soup, and his second favorite show, Loose Women, where a panel of angry-looking ladies debated important issues of the day like diets and leggings. But just as the signature tune was starting, there was a knock at the door. Dennis got up grumpily. It was Darvesh, Dennis's best friend at school. "Dennis, we desperately need you to play today," pleaded Darvesh. "I'm sorry, Darvesh, I'm just not feeling well. I can't stop sneezing or coughing." "Achoo, see?" replied Dennis. "But it's the quarterfinals today. We've always got knocked out of the quarterfinals before. Please?" Dennis sneezed again. Achoo! It was such a strong sneeze he thought he was going to turn inside out. "Please," said Darvesh hopefully as he discreetly wiped some of Dennis's stray snot from his tie. "Okay, I'll try," coughed Dennis. "Yes!" exclaimed Darvesh, as if victory was already theirs. Dennis gulped down a couple of mouthfuls of soup, grabbed his kit, and ran out of the house. Darvesh's mom was sitting in her little red Ford Fiesta outside, with the engine running. She worked on the tills at Sainsbury's and lived to see her son play football. She was the proudest mom in the world, which always made her son squirm a little. "Thank goodness you have come, Dennis," she said as Dennis clambered onto the back seat. "The team needs you today. It's a very important match. Without doubt, the most important match of the season." Just drive, please, Mom," said Darvesh. All right, we're going. Don't talk to your mother like that, Darvesh," she shouted, pretending to be angrier than she really was. She put her foot on the accelerator, and the car lurched uncertainly off towards the school playing fields. "Oh, you've decided to come, have you?" growled Gareth as they pulled up. Not only was he bigger than everyone else, he had a deeper voice and was disturbingly hairy for a boy his age. When he showered, he looked like a big monkey. "Sorry, Gareth, I just wasn't feeling well. I have a pretty bad..." Before Dennis could say cold, he sneezed again even more violently than before. Achoo! "Oh, sorry, Gareth," said Dennis, wiping a small gloop of snot from Gareth's ear with a tissue. "Let's just do this," said Gareth. Feeling weak with illness, Dennis ran onto the school pitch with his team, coughing and spluttering all the way. "Good luck, boys, especially my son, Darvesh, and of course his friend, Dennis. Let's win this for the school," shouted Darvish's mom from the side of the pitch. "My mom is like so embarrassing," rumbled Darvesh. "I think it's cool she comes," said Dennis. "My dad's never seen me playing a match." "Let's see a nice goal from you today, please, Darvesh, my son." Maybe she is a bit embarrassing," agreed Dennis. That afternoon they were playing St. Kenneth's School for Boys, one of those schools where the pupils felt a little superior just because their parents had to pay for them to go there. They were a very good team, though, and within the first 10 minutes had scored. The pressure was immediately on, and Darvesh stole the ball off a boy who looked twice his age and passed it to Dennis. "Lovely tackle, Darvesh, my son," shouted Darvesh's mom. The thrill of possessing the ball made Dennis forget his cold for a moment, and he weaved through the defense and approached the goalkeeper, a luxuriant-haired boy sporting brand-new kit, who was probably called Oscar or Tobias or something. All of a sudden they were face to face, and Dennis sneezed again uncontrollably. "Achoo!" The snot exploded onto the goalie's face, blinding him for a moment, and all Dennis needed to do was tap the ball past the line. "Foul!" shouted the goalkeeper, but the referee allowed it. It was foul, but not technically a foul. "I'm sorry about that," said Dennis. He really hadn't meant to do it. "Don't worry, I have a tissue," exclaimed Darvesh's mom. "I always carry a packet with me." She hurtled onto the pitch, hitching up her sari to avoid the mud, and ran up to the goalie. "There you go, posh boy," she said, handing him the tissue. Darvesh rolled his eyes at his mother's one-woman pitch invasion. The goalie tearfully wiped Dennis's mucus from his floppy hair. "Personally, I think St. Kenneth's doesn't stand a chance," she added. "Mom!" shouted Darvesh. Sorry, play on." 4 goals later, one from Dennis, one from Gareth, one from Darvesh, and one accidental deflection from Darvesh's mom, and the game was won. "You are through to the semifinals, boys. I can't wait," exclaimed Darvesh's mom as she drove the boys home, beeping out tunes on the Ford Fiesta's horn in celebration. For her, it was as if England had won the World Cup. "Oh, please don't come, Mom. I beg you. Not if you're going to do that again." "How dare you, Darvesh? You know I wouldn't miss the next game for the world. Oh, you make me so proud." Darvesh and Dennis looked at each other and smiled. For a moment, their victory on the pitch made them feel like they owned the universe. Even Dad raised a smile when Dennis told him that his team were through to the semifinals. But Dad wasn't going to stay happy for long. Chapter 3. Under the Mattress. "What the hell is this?" said Dad. His eyes were popping out. He was so angry. "It's a magazine," replied Dennis. "I can see it's a magazine." Dennis wondered why his dad was asking, if he already knew what it was, but he kept the thought to himself. "It's Vogue magazine, Dad." "I can see it's Vogue magazine." Dennis fell silent. He had bought the magazine from newsagents a few days before. Dennis liked the picture on the cover. It was of a very pretty girl in an even prettier yellow dress with what looked like roses sewn on the front, and it really reminded him of the dress his mom was wearing in the photograph he'd kept. He just had to buy it, even though the magazine was £3.80, and he only got £5 a week pocket money. Only 17 school children allowed in at one time read the sign in the newsagent's shop window. The shop was run by a very jolly man called Raj, who laughed even when nothing funny was happening. He laughed when he said your name as he walked through the door, and that was just what he did when Dennis went into the shop. "Dennis! Ha ha ha!" Seeing Raj laugh, it was impossible not to laugh too. Dennis visited Raj's shop most days on his way to or from school, sometimes just to chat to Raj, and after he picked up the copy of Vogue, he felt a twinge of embarrassment. He knew it was usually women who bought it, so he also picked up a copy of Shoot on the way to the counter, hoping to hide the Vogue underneath it. But after ringing up the Shoot magazine on the till, Raj paused. He looked at the Vogue magazine, then at Dennis. Dennis gulped. "Are you sure you want this, Dennis?" asked Raj. "Vogue is mainly read by ladies, and your drama teacher, Mr. Howard." Dennis hesitated. "It's a present for a friend, Raj. It's her birthday." "Oh, I see. Maybe you'd like some wrapping paper to go with it?" Okay," Dennis smiled. Raj was a wonderful businessman and very skilled at getting you to buy things you didn't really want. "All the wrapping paper is over there by the greeting cards." Dennis reluctantly wandered over. "Oh," said Raj, excited. "Maybe you need a card to go with it, too. Let me help." Raj bounded out from behind the counter and began to proudly show Dennis his range of cards. "These are very popular with the ladies. Flowers. Ladies love flowers." He pointed out another. "Kittens. Look at these lovely kittens. And puppies." Raj was really excited now. "Look at those lovely puppies. They're so beautiful, Dennis, that they make me want to cry." Said Dennis, looking at the card with puppies on it, trying to understand why it might make someone shed actual tears. "Does this lady friend of yours prefer kittens or puppies?" Raj asked. "I'm not sure," said Dennis, unable to think what this lady friend of his might like, if she existed. "Puppies, I think, Raj." "Puppies it is. These puppies are so beautiful. I want to kiss them all over." Dennis tried to nod his head in agreement, but his head wouldn't move. Is this wrapping paper okay?" asked Raj, as he pulled out a roll of what looked suspiciously like unsold Christmas wrapping paper. "It's got Father Christmas on it, Raj." "Yes, Dennis, and he's wishing you a very happy birthday," said Raj confidently. "I think I'll just leave it, thanks." "Buy one extra roll, I'll give you a third free," said Raj. "No, thanks." "3 rolls for the price of 2, that's a very good offer." "No, thanks," said Dennis again. 7 rolls for the price of 5? Dennis only got D's in math, so wasn't sure if that was a better offer or not, but he didn't want 7 rolls of Father Christmas wrapping paper, especially in March, so again he said, "No, thanks." 11 rolls for the price of 8? "No, thanks." "You're a madman, Dennis. That's 3 rolls free." "But I really don't need 11 rolls of wrapping paper," said Dennis. Okay, said Raj. "Let me just put these to the till for you." Dennis followed Raj to the till. He glanced briefly at the sweets on the counter. Vogue magazine, Shoot magazine, card, and now you're eyeing up my Yorkie bars, aren't you? Said Raj, laughing. "Well, I was just... Take one." "No, thanks." "Take one," insisted Raj. "It's okay. Please, Dennis, I want you to have a Yorkie bar." "I don't really like Yorkie bars." "Everyone likes Yorkie bars. Please, take one." Dennis smiled and picked up a Yorkie. "1 Yorkie bar, 60 pence," said Raj. Dennis's face dropped. "So that's £5 in total, please," continued the shopkeeper. Dennis rummaged in his pocket and pulled out some coins. "As my favorite customer," said Raj, "I give you a discount." "Oh, thank you," said Dennis. £4.99, please." Dennis had walked halfway up the street before he heard a voice shout, "Sellotape!" He looked around. Raj was holding a large box of sellotape. "You need sellotape to wrap the present." "No, thanks," said Dennis politely. "We've got some at home." 15 rolls for the price of 13, Raj shouted. Dennis smiled and carried on walking. He felt a sudden urge of excitement. He couldn't wait to get home and open the magazine and gaze at its hundreds of glossy, colorful pages. He walked faster, then started jogging, and when he really couldn't contain his excitement anymore, he started running. When he got home, Dennis bounded upstairs. He closed the bedroom door, lay down on his bed, and turned the first page. Like a treasure box from an old film, the magazine seemed to shine a golden light on its face. The first 100 pages were all adverts, but in a way they were the best bit. Pages and pages of glorious photographs of beautiful women in beautiful clothes and makeup and jewelry and shoes and bags and sunglasses. Names like Yves Saint Laurent, Christian Dior, Tom Ford, Alexander McQueen, Louis Vuitton, Marc Jacobs, and Stella McCartney ran underneath the images. Dennis didn't know who any of them were, but he loved the way their names looked on the page. The adverts were followed by a few pages of writing. They looked boring, so he didn't read them. Then, pages and pages of fashion shoots. These were not very different from the adverts, featuring more beautiful women in photographs that were moody and fabulous. The magazine even smelled exotic, as it had special pages where you pulled open the flap to have a sniff of the newest perfume. Dennis pored over every page, mesmerized by the dresses, their color, their length, their cut. He could lose himself in the pages forever. The glamour, the beauty, the perfection. Suddenly, he heard a key in the door. "Dennis? Oi, bro, where are you?" It was John. Dennis quickly hid the magazine under his mattress. He knew somehow that he didn't want his brother to see it. He opened the bedroom door and called down as innocently as he could from the top of the stairs. "I'm just up here." "What are you doing?" asked John as he leaped up the stairs, a Jaffa cake in his mouth. "Nothing. Just got home." "Do you want to have a kickabout in the garden?" "Yeah, okay." But all the time they played, Dennis couldn't help thinking about the magazine. It was as if it was glowing like gold from under the mattress. That night, when his brother was in the bath, he quietly lifted a copy of Vogue from under the mattress and silently turned the pages, studying every hem, every stitch, every fabric. Every moment he could, Dennis returned to this glorious world. It was his Narnia, only without the talking lion that's supposed to be Jesus. But Dennis's escape to the magical world of glamour ended the day his dad discovered the magazine. "I can see it's Vogue. What I want to know is why a son of mine wants to look at a fashion magazine." It sounded like a question, but there was such anger and force in Dad's voice, Dennis wasn't sure if he really wanted an answer. Not that Dennis could think of one anyway. "I just like it. It's only pictures and things about dresses and that." "I can see that," said Dad, looking at the magazine. And that was when he paused and a funny look crossed his face. He studied the cover for a moment. The girl in the flowery frock. "That dress, it's like the one you're—" "Yes, Dad?" "Nothing, Dennis, nothing." Dad looked for a moment. He was going to cry. "It's okay, Dad," said Dennis softly, and he slowly moved his hand and placed it over his dad's. He remembered doing the same with his mom once when Dad had made her cry. He remembered how strange it felt too, a little boy comforting a grown-up. Dad let Dennis hold his hand for a moment before moving it away, embarrassed. He raised his voice again. "No, son, it's just not right. Dresses. It's weird." "Well, Dad, what are you doing looking under my mattress in the first place?" In truth, Dennis knew exactly why his dad was looking under his mattress. Dad owned a copy of a rude magazine like the ones on the top shelf at Raja's shop. Sometimes John would sneak into their dad's room and smuggle it out and look at it. Dennis looked at it too sometimes, but didn't find it all that exciting. He was disappointed when the ladies took their clothes off. He preferred looking at what they were wearing. Anyway, when John borrowed his father's magazine, it wasn't really like when you borrow a book from the library. There wasn't an inlay card that would have to be stamped by a bespectacled librarian, and you didn't incur fines if you returned it late. So John usually just kept it. Dennis guessed his dad's magazine had gone missing again, and he had been looking for it when he found the copy of Vogue. "Well, I was just looking under your mattress because..." Dad looked uncomfortable and then angry. "It doesn't matter why I was just looking under your mattress. I'm your dad. I can look under your mattress any time I like." He finished his speech with a tone of triumph grown-ups sometimes use when they are talking nonsense and they know it. Dennis's dad brandished the magazine. "This is going in the dustbin, son." "But Dad," Dennis protested. "I'm sorry, it's just not right. A boy your age reading Vogue magazine." He said Vogue magazine as if he was talking a foreign language he didn't understand. "It's just not right," he muttered over and over as he left the room. Dennis sat on the edge of his bed. He listened as his dad clumped his way down the stairs and then lifted the dustbin lid. Finally, he heard a clanging thud as the magazine hit the bottom of the bin. Chapter 4. Wanting to Disappear. "Morning, Dennis, or should I say Denise?" said John, laughing cruelly. "I told you not to mention it," said Dad sternly, as he coated his white toast with an inch-thick layer of butter. When Mom was around, she'd have made him have margarine and brown bread. Dennis slumped down at the kitchen table in silence, not even looking at his brother. He poured himself some Rice Krispies. "Seen any nice dresses recently?" taunted John. He laughed again. "I told you to leave it alone," said Dad, even louder than before. "Magazines like that are for girls and woofers." "Shut up," said Dad. Dennis suddenly didn't feel hungry anymore and picked up his bag and walked out of the door. He slammed it behind him. He could still hear Dad saying, "What did I say, John? It's over, okay? It's in the bin." Dennis walked unwillingly to school. He didn't want to be home or at school. He was afraid his brother would tell somebody and he'd be laughed at. He just wanted to disappear. When he was much younger, he used to believe that if he closed his eyes, no one else could see him. Right now, he wished it was true. The first lesson of the day was history. Dennis liked history. They were studying the Tudor dynasty, and he loved looking at the pictures of the kings and queens in all their finery, especially Elizabeth I, who really knew how to power dress, an expression he had read in Vogue next to a shoot of a model in a beautifully cut business suit. But Dennis always found chemistry, the next lesson, mind-numbingly boring. He spent most of the lesson staring at a periodic table, trying to fathom what it was. When break time came, Dennis played football as usual on the playground with his friends. He was having fun until he saw John with a group of his mates, the bad boys with short hair who the careers advisors would probably advise to become nightclub bouncers or criminals. They ambled through the middle of the makeshift pitch. Dennis held his breath. John nodded at his brother but said nothing. Dennis let out a sigh of relief. He was pretty sure his brother couldn't have told anyone that he'd bought a women's fashion magazine. After all, Darvesh was playing football with him as he always did. They played with an old tennis ball that Darvesh's dog, Oddbod, had chewed. It was a school rule that footballs weren't allowed at the playground in case a window got broken. Darvesh set Dennis up to score with a daring cross. Then Dennis headed the ball and it flew too high up past what was meant to be the goal and through the window of the headmaster's office. John and his friends stared, mouths open. The playground fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the unlikely event that someone had dropped a pin at that exact moment. "Oops," said Darvesh. "Yes, oops," said Dennis. Oops was really an understatement. The headmaster, Mr. Hawtrey, hated children. Actually, he hated everybody, probably even himself. He wore an immaculate three-piece gray suit with a charcoal-collared tie and dark-framed glasses. His hair was meticulously combed and parted, and he had a thin black mustache. It was as if he actively wanted to look sinister, and he had a face that someone who'd spent their whole life grimacing ends up with. A permanently grimacing one. "He might not be in his office," ventured Darvesh hopefully. "Maybe," said Dennis, gulping. At that moment, the headmaster's face peered out of the window. "School!" he bellowed. The playground fell silent. "Who kicked this ball?" He held the tennis ball between his fingers with the same sense of disgust that dog owners do when they're forced to pick up their dog's doo-doo. Dennis was too scared to say anything. "I asked a question. Who kicked it?" Dennis gulped. "I didn't kick it, sir," he offered tentatively. "But I did header it." "Detention today, boy. 4 o'clock. "Thank you, sir," said Dennis, not sure what else to say. "Because of your behavior, all ball games at the playground are banned for today," added Mr. Hawtrey, before disappearing back into his study. A sigh of angry disappointment echoed around the playground. Dennis hated it when teachers did that, when they made everyone suffer to make you unpopular with your classmates. It was a cheap trick. "Don't worry, Dennis," said Darvesh. "Everyone knows Mr. Hawtrey's a total—" "Yeah, I know." They sat on their bags by the wall of the science block and opened their lunch boxes, devouring the sandwiches that were meant for lunch. Dennis hadn't told Darvesh about buying Vogue, but he wanted to find out what his friend thought about it, in a roundabout way. Darvesh was Sikh, and he was in the same year as Dennis and only 12. He didn't wear a turban yet. He wore a patka, a bubble hat type thing that kept his hair out of his face. That's because Sikh men aren't supposed to cut their hair. There were lots of different types of kids at the school, but Darvesh was the only one who wore a patka. Do you feel different, Darvesh? Asked Dennis. In what way? Well, just, you're the only boy in school who has to wear one of those things on your head. Oh, that? Yeah, well, with my family, of course I don't. And when Mom took me to India at Christmas to visit Grandma, I didn't at all. All the Sikh boys were wearing them. But at school? At first I did, yes. I felt a bit embarrassed, because I knew I looked different to everyone. Yeah? And then I suppose as people got to know me, they realized I wasn't really that different. I just wear this funny thing on my head. He laughed. Dennis laughed too. Yeah, you're just my mate, Darvesh. I don't really think about the thing in your head at all. In fact, I'd quite like one. No, you wouldn't. It itches like hell. But it would be boring if we were all the same, wouldn't it? It certainly would, Dennis smiled. Chapter 5. Just Doodling. Dennis had never had a detention before, so anyway he was quite looking forward to it. When he turned up at classroom 4C to report to the French teacher, Miss Windsor, he noticed there was only one other person who had been sentenced to an hour's incarceration. It was Lisa James, only the most beautiful girl in the school. She was super cool too, and somehow she always made her school uniform look like it was a costume in a pop video. Even though they had never spoken, Dennis had a really big crush on Lisa. Not that anything would ever happen though. Her being 2 years older and 6 inches taller made her literally out of reach. Hi, Lisa said. She had a gorgeous voice, rough round the edges, but softened inside. Oh, hi, Dennis pretended not to remember her name. Lisa, what's your name? Dennis thought for a moment about changing his name to something cooler like Brad or Dirk to try and impress her, but he realized that would be insane. Dennis. Hi, Dennis, said Lisa. What are you in for? I headed a ball into Audrey's office. Cool, said Lisa, laughing. Dennis laughed a little too. She obviously assumed that he had headed the ball into the headmaster's office on purpose, and he wasn't about to correct her. What about you? Asked Dennis. I wasn't wearing the correct school uniform. This time, Audrey said my skirt was too short. Dennis looked down at Lisa's skirt. It was quite short. I don't really care, really, she continued. I'd rather wear what I want and get the odd detention now and then. Sorry, interrupted Miss Windsor. There's not really meant to be any talking in detention. Miss Windsor was one of the nice teachers who didn't really enjoy telling people off. She would usually say excuse me or sorry before she did. She was probably in her late 40s. Miss Windsor didn't wear a wedding ring, or it seemed, to have any kids. She liked to exude a little French sophistication, throwing colorful silk scarves over her shoulder with mock nonchalance and devouring 4 packs of croissants on the Tesco Metro at break time. Sorry, Miss Windsor, said Lisa. Dennis and Lisa smiled at each other. Dennis got back to his lines. I must not head her balls into the headmaster's window. I must not head her balls into the headmaster's window. I must not head her balls into the headmaster's window. He looked over at what Lisa was doing. Instead of her lines, she was idly sketching some dress designs. A ball gown with a plunging back looked like it wouldn't be out of place in Vogue. She turned over the page and started sketching a strapless top and pencil skirt. Next to that, she drew a long flowing white suit that went in and out in all the right places. Lisa clearly had a real flair for fashion. Excuse me, said Miss Windsor, but you should really concentrate on your own work, Dennis. Sorry, miss, said Dennis. He started his lines again. I must not head her ball into the headmaster's window. I must head her Vogue into the headmaster's window. I must not read Vogue into the headmaster's. Dennis sighed and rubbed out the last few lines. He was getting distracted. After about 45 minutes, Miss Windsor looked at her watch anxiously and addressed the class of 2. I'm sorry, she said, But would either of you mind if we finish this detention 15 minutes early? Only I would like quite to get home in time for neighbors. Last year's coffee shop is reopening today after the dramatic fire. No problem, miss, said Lisa, smiling. Don't worry, we won't tell anyone. Thank you, said Miss Windsor, confused for a moment that somehow the roles had been reversed, and it was Dennis and Lisa who were letting her off. Do you want to walk me home, Dennis? Asked Lisa. What? Said Dennis, in a panic. I said, do you want to walk me home? Yeah, okay, said Dennis, trying to sound cool. Dennis felt like a celebrity as he walked down the road with Lisa. He walked slowly so he could be with her for as long as possible. I couldn't help noticing your drawings, those dress designs. They're brilliant, said Dennis. Oh, thanks. They were nothing really. I was just doodling. And I love the way you look. Thank you, replied Lisa, trying not to laugh. I mean dress. Dennis corrected himself. Dress. I love the way you dress. Thanks, said Lisa, smiling again. She looked so unutterably gorgeous when she smiled that Dennis could barely look at her. Instead, he looked down at her shoes, noticing they were round-toed. Beautiful shoes, he offered. Well, thank you for noticing. Apparently, round-toed shoes are in this year. Pointy-toed are out. Where did you read that? Vogue. You read Vogue? Dennis caught his breath. What had he said? In all the excitement of being with Lisa, his tongue was running away with itself. Once. I think that's cool. You do? Asked Dennis, incredulous. Yeah, not nearly enough boys are into fashion. I suppose not, Dennis said. He wasn't sure if he was into fashion or just liked looking at pictures of pretty dresses, but he chose not to mention it. Do you have a favorite designer? Lisa asked. Dennis wasn't sure if he did, but he remembered really liking one of the dresses in the magazine, a cream floor-length ball gown designed by John Gailey something. John Gailey something, he said. John Galliano? Yeah, he's amazing. A legend. He designs all the pieces for Dior too. Dennis loved that she said pieces. That was the word they'd used in Vogue for items of clothes. Well, this is my house. Thanks, Dennis. Bye, said Lisa. Dennis's heart sank a little that their walk was already over. She went to go towards the front door, then stopped for a moment. You could come over at the weekend if you like, she said. I've got loads of great fashion magazines I could show you. I really want to be a designer or a stylist or something when I'm older. Well, you are very stylish, said Dennis. He meant it sincerely, but somehow it sounded cheesy. Thank you, said Lisa. She knew she was. Everyone knew she was. It's Saturday tomorrow. Is 11 o'clock any good for you? I think so, said Dennis, as if any event in his past or future could prevent him from being at her house at 11. See you then, she said, as she gave him a smile and passed out of view. And just like that, Dennis's world went back to normal again, like when the lights go on in the cinema at the end of a film. Chapter 6. Forever and a Moment. At 10:59 a.m., Dennis was waiting outside Lisa's house. She had said 11 o'clock, but he didn't want to seem too keen, so he waited for his watch to count the seconds until 11. 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 00. He pressed the bell. The faint sound of Lisa's voice floated down the stairs, and the blurry vision of her through the glass of the door was enough to make his heart beat faster. Hey, she said, smiling. Hey, he said back. Not that he'd ever say hey to anyone before, but he wanted to be like Lisa. Come in, she said, and he followed her into the house. It was very similar to the one Dennis lived in, but where his was gloomy, Lisa's was full of light and color. There were paintings and family pictures haphazardly arranged on the walls. A sweet smell of freshly baked cake lingered in the hall. Do you want a drink? A glass of white wine, perhaps, said Dennis, trying to act 3 times his age. Lisa looked bemused for a moment. I don't have any wine. What else do you like? Bongo? Lisa raised her eyebrows. I think we've got some, bongo. She found a carton and poured a couple of glasses. Then they went upstairs to her room. Dennis instantly adored it. In truth, it was how he would like his room to be. She had pictures from fashion magazines all over the walls, stylish shots of beautiful women in glamorous locations. On the shelves were books about fashion or famous film stars like Audrey Hepburn or Marilyn Monroe. A sewing machine sat in the corner of the room and she had a big pile of vogues by the bed. I'm collecting them, she said. I've got an Italian one too. It's hard to get here, but it's amazing. The best vogue is Italian. Heavy though. Would you like to see it? I'd love to, said Dennis. He'd had no idea there were different vogues around the world. They sat on her bed together, slowly turning the pages. The first shoot was in color and featured dresses that were only black or white, or a combination of the two. Wow, that dress is gorgeous, said Dennis. Chanel. It's probably madly expensive, but it is beautiful. A lot sequins, and that's lit up the side, said Lisa. She traced her fingers longingly along the page. What seemed like forever in a moment went by as they studied every page, discussing each detail of every dress. When they reached the end, they felt like they'd been friends forever. Lisa pulled out another magazine to show him one of her favorite shoots, or stories, as she called them. It was from an old British Vogue, and featured lots of models in wigs and metallic dresses. It looked like a scene from an old science fiction film. Dennis loved the extravagance of these fantasies, so different from the gray, cold reality of his own life. You'd look stunning in that gold dress, said Dennis, pointing to a girl with similar hair coloring to Lisa. Anyone would. It's an amazing dress. I could never afford any of these, but I like to look at these pictures and get ideas for my own designs. Do you want to see? Oh, yeah, replied Dennis excitedly. Lisa pulled a large scrapbook from her shelf. It was full of brilliant illustrations she had drawn of skirts and blouses and dresses and hats. Next to these, Lisa had stuck lots of things onto the page. Strips of glittering fabric, cut-out photographs of film costumes, even buttons. Dennis stopped Lisa turning the page at an especially gorgeous drawing she had done on an orange sequin dress. That one is beautiful, he said. Thanks, Dennis. I'm really pleased with it. I'm making it right now. Really? Can I see? Of course. She reached into her cupboard and pulled out the half-finished dress. I got this material really cheap. It was just from down the market, she said. But I think it's going to look really good. It's a little bit 1970, I think. Very glamorous. She held up the dress by its hanger, although it was still cut a little roughly around the edges and had a few loose threads. It was covered in hundreds of little round sequins and twinkled effortlessly in the morning sunlight. It's amazing, said Dennis. It would look good on you, said Lisa. She laughed and held the dress next to Dennis. He laughed too, and then looked down at it, allowing himself to imagine for a moment what he would look like wearing it, and then told himself to stop being silly. It's really beautiful, he said. It's not fair though, is it? I mean, boys' clothes are so boring. Well, I think all those rules are boring, about what people can and can't wear. Surely everyone should be able to wear whatever they like. Yes, I suppose they should, said Dennis. He had never really been encouraged to think like this before. She was right. What was wrong with wearing the things you liked? Why don't you put it on? Lisa asked with a cheeky smile. There was a silence for a moment. Maybe that's a crazy idea, Lisa said, backtracking as she sensed Dennis's awkwardness. But dresses can be beautiful and dressing up is fun. I love putting on pretty dresses. I bet some boys would like it too. It's no big deal. Dennis's heart was beating really fast. He wanted to say yes, but he couldn't. He just couldn't. This was all a bit much. I've got to go, he snapped. Really? Asked Lisa, disappointed. Yes, I'm sorry, Lisa. Well, will you come and visit me again? Today had been really fun. The next issue of Vogue is out next week. Why don't you come over next Saturday? I don't know, said Dennis as he rushed out of the house. But thanks again for the bongo. Chapter 7. Watching the curtain edges grow light. "Happy birthday, Dad!" exclaimed Dennis and John excitedly. "I don't like birthdays," said Dad. Dennis's face fell. Sunday was always a miserable day for him. He knew that loads of families were sitting down together for a roast dinner, and that only made him think about Mom. When Dad did try and cook a Sunday roast for his sons, it only made their loss more painful. It was as if there was a place laid in all their minds for someone they loved who wasn't there. And anyway, Dad was not a good cook. But this Sunday was even worse than usual. It was Dad's birthday, and he was determined not to celebrate it. Dennis and John had waited all afternoon to wish him a happy birthday. He had left for work very early that day. Now it was 7 o'clock at night, and Dad had just got in. The boys had crept downstairs to the kitchen to surprise him, where he was sitting alone wearing the same red checked jacket he always did. He had a can of cheap lager and a bag of chips. "Why don't you go and play, boys? I just want to be on my own." The card and cake Dennis and John were holding seemed to fade away in their hands at Dad's words. "I'm sorry, boys," he said, catching their hurt. "It's just there's not much to celebrate, is there?" "We got you a card, Dad, and a cake," offered John. "Thanks." He opened the card. It was from Roger's shop and featured a big smiling cartoon bear, inexplicably wearing sunglasses and Bermuda shorts. Dennis had chosen it from Roger's shop because it had "Happy Birthday to the best dad in the world" written on it. "Thanks, boys," said Dad as he looked at it. "I don't deserve it, though. I'm not the best dad in the world." "Yes, you are, Dad," said Dennis. "We think you are," added John tentatively. Dad stared at the card again. Dennis and John had thought it would make him happy, but it seemed to be having the opposite effect. "I'm sorry, boys. It's just I find birthdays hard, since your mom left." "I know, Dad," said Dennis. John nodded and tried to smile. "Dennis scored a goal today for the school," said John, trying to change the subject to something happy. "Did you, son?" "Yes, Dad," said Dennis. "It was a semifinal today and we won 2-1. I got one goal and Darvash scored the other. We're through the final." "Well, that's good," said Dad, staring into the distance. He took another gulp from his can. "Sorry, I just need to be alone for a bit." "Okay, Dad," said John, nodding to Dennis that they should leave. Dennis touched his Dad's shoulder for a moment before they retreated from the room. They had tried, but birthdays, Christmas, going on holiday, and even day trips to the sea, slowly all those things had disappeared. Mom had always organized them, and now they seemed a lifetime away. Home was becoming a very cold, gray place. "I need a hug," said Dennis. "I ain't hugging you." "Why not?" "I'm your brother. I ain't hugging you. It's weird. I've got to go anyway. I told the boys I was going to hang around on the wall outside the office with them for a bit." Dennis needed to get out of the house too. "I'm going to Dervesh's then. See you later." As he walked across the park, he felt bad for leaving his dad on his own in the kitchen. He wished he could make Dad happy. "What's up?" asked Darvesh as they were looking at videos on YouTube in his bedroom. "Nothing," said Dennis unconvincingly. He wasn't a good liar, but then, lying is not the thing that it's good to be good at. I myself have never ever lied. Apart from just then, you seem like really distracted. Dennis was distracted. Not only was he thinking about his dad, he couldn't stop thinking about that orange sequin dress. "I'm sorry, Darvesh. You'd be my friend, whatever, wouldn't you?" "Of course. Darvesh, Dennis, would you boys like something refreshing? Like a drink?" shouted Darvesh's mom from the next room. "No thanks, Mom," Darvesh shouted back before sighing loudly. Dennis just smiled. "It's a high-energy beverage. It'll get your strength up for the final," came the insistent reply. "All right, Mom, maybe later." "Good boys. You'll make me very proud if you win, but I'll still be proud if you don't." Yes, said Darvesh. "She's so embarrassing." "It's only because she loves you," said Dennis. Darvesh went silent for a moment, so Dennis changed the subject. "Can I try on your hat thing?" he asked. "My patka?" "Yes, your patka." "Sure, if you really want. I've got a spare one here, I think," said Darvesh as he rummaged in his drawer before pulling out another hat. He passed it to Dennis, and Dennis carefully put it on. "How do I look?" asked Dennis. "Like a bit of a prat." They both laughed loudly. Then Darvesh thought for a moment. "I mean, It doesn't make you sick, does it? On you, it's just a hat. It's just dressing up, ain't it? Dennis walked home feeling a bit brighter. He'd even laughed at some of the stupid videos they'd found, particularly one of a cat clambering over a baby and putting its bum in the baby's face. But when he walked in, he saw that Dad was still sitting at the kitchen table where they had left him, with another can of lager, but the same cold and soggy chips. "Hi, Dad," said Dennis, trying to sound happy to see him. His dad looked up for a moment and then sighed heavily. John had already gone to bed. When Dennis went up, John didn't even bother to say anything. As they lay there, the silence was deafening. There was nothing that could be said. Dennis couldn't sleep at all and spent all night watching the curtain edges grow light. Only one thing stopped him suffocating, thinking about Lisa, the world she had opened for him, and the sequined orange dress, sparkling and sparkling and sparkling in the sunlight. Chapter 8. Lying on the carpet with Lisa. Lisa held out the orange sequin dress. "I finished it," she said. It was the next Saturday, and back in Lisa's bedroom, she and Dennis had been poring over every page of the new issue of Vogue before she surprised him. The dress was perfect. "That is the most beautiful thing," said Dennis, "that I've ever seen." "Why, thank you, Dennis." Lisa laughed a little, slightly embarrassed by the weight of the compliment. "Actually, I want you to have it. It's a present." "For me?" asked Dennis. "Yes, Dennis, you love it so much. You should have it." "I couldn't." "Yes, you could." She handed him the dress. Thanks, Lisa," said Dennis, taking it from her. It was heavier than he imagined. The sequins felt unlike anything he had felt before. It was a work of art. Quite simply, the best present he had ever been given. But where would he keep it? He couldn't exactly hang it next to his anorak in the wardrobe he shared with his brother. And what was he going to do with it? "Why don't you try it on?" said Lisa. Dennis's stomach did a flip. He felt how a new companion in Doctor Who must feel when they're about to enter the TARDIS for the first time. Now this really was going to be different. "It'll be fun," said Lisa. Dennis looked at the dress. It would be fun to try it on. "Well, if you're sure." "I'm sure." Dennis took a deep breath. "Just for a moment, though," he said. "Yay!" Dennis started to take off his clothes and suddenly felt really embarrassed. "Don't worry, I won't look," said Lisa, closing her eyes. Dennis undressed down to his socks and pants, and then stepped into the dress and pulled it up over his shoulders. It felt different to wearing his normal boy's clothes. The fabric felt so unfamiliar next to his skin, all silky and smooth. He reached around for the zip at the back. "I'm not sure I can." "Let me," said the expert, opening her eyes. "Turn around." She guided the zip up his back. "It looks great. How does it feel?" "Nice. It feels nice." In fact, it felt more than nice. It felt wonderful. "Can I see it in the mirror?" "Not yet. We haven't found the shoes." Lisa pulled out some stunning high-heeled gold shoes with red soles on the bottom. "I got these in Oxfam. They're Christian Louboutins, but the old dear in the shop only charged me £2 for them." Dennis wondered if Christian Louboutin might ever need them back. He bent down to put the shoes on. "You'd better take your socks off first," Lisa said, looking down at his bedraggled gray socks. His big toe poked out of one particularly large hole. They were rather spoiling the look. "Oh, yes, of course," said Dennis, before tugging them off and placing his feet on the narrow shoes. The heels were quite high, and he felt for a second that he might topple over. Lisa held his hand to steady him. "Now can I look in the mirror?" he asked. "You haven't got any makeup on yet." "No, Lisa, no. You've got to do this properly, Dennis." Lisa reached for her makeup bag. "This is so much fun. I always wanted a little sister. Now do this with your lips." She stretched her mouth open. He copied her. He rolled the lipstick gently across his lips. It felt weird. Nice, but weird. He never knew lipstick tasted like that. Oily and waxy. "Eyeshadow?" "No, I really don't," protested Dennis. "Just a little." He closed his eyes as she lightly applied some silver eyeshadow with a little brush. "Looking good, Dennis," she said. "Or should I say Denise?" That's why my brother called me when he found out about the magazine. Well, that's your girl's name, I suppose. Your name is Dennis, but if you were a girl, you'd be called Denise. Can I look in the mirror yet? He asked. Lisa adjusted the dress expertly before silently leading him to the mirror on the bedroom wall. Dennis gazed at himself. For a moment he was shocked by what he saw. Then the shock turned to wonder, and he laughed. He felt so happy he wanted to dance. Sometimes you feel things so deeply that words aren't enough. He started to move around in front of the mirror. Lisa joined in, humming some made-up music. For a moment they were in their very own crazy little musical before they fell to the floor laughing. I guess you like it then? Asked Lisa, still giggling. Yes, it's just a bit strange. Yes, a bit strange. You look good though, offered Lisa. Really? Said Dennis. He was enjoying lying on the carpet with Lisa a little too much, and he felt embarrassed. So he got up and looked at himself in the mirror again. Lisa followed him. Yeah, in fact, you look great, she said. You know what? What? Asked Dennis eagerly. I think you could fool anybody dressed like that. You look just like a girl. Really? Are you sure? Dennis looked at himself again in the mirror, squinting. He tried to imagine that he was looking at a stranger. He did look a bit like a girl. Yeah, said Lisa. I'm sure. You look amazing. Do you want to try on something else? I don't know if I should, said Dennis, suddenly self-conscious. Someone might come in. My mom and dad are at the garden center. It's so boring, but they love it there. Trust me, they won't be back for hours. Well, maybe this one then, said Dennis, displaying a long purple dress that Lisa had copied from one she'd seen Kylie wear at an awards do. Nice choice. And he tried on a short red dress that Lisa's mom had bought for her to wear to a family wedding, then the little yellow puff ball skirt from the 1980 that her Auntie Sue had passed on to her, then a lovely nautical-themed blue and white striped dress that Lisa had found in cancer research. That afternoon, Dennis ended up trying on everything in Lisa's wardrobe: gold shoes, silver shoes, red shoes, green shoes, boots, big handbags, little handbags, clutch bags, blouses, long flowing skirts, miniskirts, earrings, bangles, hair scrunchies, fairy wings, even a tiara. It's not fair, said Dennis. Girls have got all the best stuff. Rules don't apply here, laughed Lisa. Dennis, you can be whoever you want to be. Chapter 9. Bonjour, Denise. The next morning, Dennis was in bed, lying perfectly still, but he felt like he was on a roller coaster. His mind was racing. Dressing up had made him feel like it didn't have to be boring. Dennis, living in his boring life anymore. I can be whoever I want to be, he thought. He took a shower. The bathroom was dark green like an avocado. Dennis had never understood why his parents had chosen such a revolting color for a bathroom. If he had been consulted, he would have installed a white antique bath, which he could have complemented with black and white tiles, but being a child, he'd never been asked for his opinion. To use the shower, you needed the precision of a safe cracker. Turn the dial 1 millimeter to the left or right, and the water would go either ice cold or boiling hot. Dennis positioned the dial exactly where it should be so as not to be frozen or scalded to death. He squeezed some imperial leather shower gel on his hand. It was what he did every morning. It was part of the grinding routine of his life. Yet somehow the world felt different, burning with possibilities. Downstairs in the kitchen, John was eating his toast and chocolate spread and watching the Hollyoaks omnibus. Dad gone already? Asked Dennis. Yeah, I heard him leave at 4. Didn't the lorry wake you up? No, don't think so. He said something about having to be up early to take some cat food to Doncaster. Dennis thought how his dad's life as a lorry driver wasn't as glamorous as it sounded. And it didn't sound that glamorous to begin with. Dennis poured himself some Rice Krispies. And just as he was about to eat a spoonful, the doorbell rang. It was a confident ring, long and loud. Dring! Dennis and John were so curious about who it could be at the door on a Sunday morning that they both rushed to open it. The postman didn't come on a Sunday, nor indeed in the morning anymore, preferring to do his round at some hour of his choosing in the afternoon. It wasn't the postman. It was Lisa. "Hi," she said. Said John, now suddenly unable to form words. Dennis knew John fancied Lisa. He stared at her all the time at school, but then everybody fancied Lisa. She was so utterly gorgeous that probably even the hearts of squirrels missed a beat when she walked by. What do you want?" asked John awkwardly, unable to function properly in this close proximity to beauty. "I've come to see Dennis," she said. "Oh," said John. He turned to Dennis with a look of hurt and injustice in his eyes, like a dog about to be put down. "Come in," said Dennis, loving how much all this was winding John up. "I'm just having breakfast." Dennis led Lisa into the kitchen. They sat down. "Oh, I love Hollyoaks," said Lisa. "Yeah, I do too," said Dennis. John shot him a look that clearly stated, "You filthy liar. You have never previously expressed any interest in the long-running Chester-based teen soap opera." Dennis ignored her. "Do you want anything to eat?" he asked Lisa. "No, I'm fine. I'd love a cup of tea, though." "Cool," said Dennis, and put some water in the kettle. John gave him another look. This one clearly said, "You never say cool. I'm so angry I'm going to have to tear off your head and use it as a football." "I had fun yesterday," said Lisa. Yes, said Dennis tentatively, not wanting to give too much away in front of his brother. "I had a great time." He knew he was driving his brother insane with jealousy, so added, "With you." "We are meant to be going up the park to play football now," said John, trying to put emphasis on every word to sound authoritative, but actually only sounding a bit mad. "You go ahead. I'm going to chill with Lisa for a while." Dennis looked at John and smiled. Lisa smiled too. They smiled John out of the room. Lisa and Dennis listened to the door shutting behind him. Lisa laughed excitedly at all the intrigue. "Well, how do you feel today?" she asked. "Well, I just feel great," said Dennis. "I've had an idea," said Lisa. "Crazy, but go on." "Well, you know what I said about you could fool everyone into thinking you were a girl?" "Yes," said Dennis nervously. "Well, some of the kids at school just had French exchange students staying with them." "So?" said Dennis. "So I thought, this is crazy, but I thought I could dress you up as a girl and take you to Rogers and say you were my French pen pal or something. You wouldn't have to say much because, you'd be French." "No," said Dennis. He felt exhilaration and fear of somebody who had just been chosen to assassinate the president. "It could be fun." "Absolutely not." "How amazing would it be, though, to pass you off as a girl?" "It's insane. I'd go into Roger's shop every day. He'd know for certain it was me." "I bet he wouldn't," said Lisa. "I've got a wig my mom bought for a fancy dress party. I could put some makeup on you like yesterday. It'd be so much fun. Let's do it today." "Today?" "Yeah, it's Sunday, so there should be less people about. I bought a dress with me because I was hoping you'd say yes." "I don't know, Lisa. I've got a lot of homework to do." "I've got you a handbag, too." 10 minutes later, Dennis looked at himself in the hall mirror. He was wearing a short electric blue dress and holding a silver clutch bag. It was a party dress, really, not what anyone would wear on a Sunday morning to a newsagent shop, least of all a 12-year-old boy. But having Lisa fuss over him, applying makeup to his face, squeezing his feet into matching silver high-heeled shoes, and styling the wig had been so much fun he didn't complain. "Is Raj really going to believe I'm your French pen pal?" he asked. "You look amazing. It's all about confidence. If you believe it, everyone else will too." "Maybe. Come on, let's see you walk." Dennis trotted up and down the hall, doing his best impression of a catwalk model. It's like Bambi taking his first steps," said Lisa with a laugh. "Thanks a lot." "Sorry, just joking. Look, you've got to stand upright in heels like these." Dennis copied Lisa's posture and immediately felt a little more confident in the silver shoes. "I quite like this, actually," he said. "Yes, it's a good feeling. Being that little bit taller, it makes your legs look great." "Is Denise a French name, too?" he asked. "If you say anything in a French accent, it sounds French," said Lisa. "Denise," said Dennis, laughing. "Bonjour, je m'appelle Denise." "Bonjour, Denise. Vous êtes très belle," said Lisa. "Merci beaucoup, mademoiselle Lisa." They both laughed. Are you ready? Lisa asked. Ready to go outside? No, of course I'm not. But I will. They both laughed again. Lisa opened the door and Dennis stepped out into the sunshine. Chapter 10. Pickled Onion Monster Munch. At first, Lisa held Dennis's hand to steady him. After a few paces, the tottering calmed down a little, and Dennis began to walk more easily. High heels do take a bit of getting used to. Not that I would know, reader. Someone told me. Soon they arrived at Roger's shop. Lisa squeezed Dennis's hands reassuringly. He took a deep breath and they went inside. Good morning to you, Miss Lisa, said Raj, smiling broadly. I have the new copy of Italian Vogue for you. Oh, my word, it's heavy though, like a brick. I ordered it in especially for you. Wow, thanks so much, Raj, said Lisa. And who is your new friend? Oh, this is my French exchange student Denise, said Lisa. Raj studied Dennis for a moment. Had they fooled him? Dennis' mouth was dry with nerves. Hello, Denise. Welcome to my shop, said Raj. Lisa and Dennis smiled at each other. Dennis looked so good as Denise that Raj clearly didn't suspect a thing. It is possibly the finest shop of this kind in the whole of England. Now you can get all your postcards to send back home. Raj picked up a packet of plain white postcards. They're blank, Raj, said Lisa. Yes, you'll have to draw some sights of London on these. I stock an unrivaled selection of felt-tipped pens. So you are from France? Yes, replied Lisa. Oui, added Dennis tentatively. I've always wanted to go to France, said Raj. It's in France, isn't it? Lisa and Dennis shared a confused look. Well, if there's anything I can do whilst you're in England, Miss... Forgive me, what is your name again? Asked Raj. Denise, replied Dennis. It's a lovely accent you have, Miss Denise. Merci. What did you say? Asked Raj. Thank you, said Lisa. Oh, mercy, said Raj, delighted at this discovery. I can speak French now. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Now, Lisa, before you go, I have some special orders today I would like to tell you about. Lisa and Dennis both rolled their eyes. 9 Kinder Eggs for the price of 8. No, thanks, said Lisa. Non, merci, added Dennis, growing in confidence. I have some excellent bags of pickled onion Monster Munch, only slightly out of date. 15 bags for the price of 13. They are a British delicacy. Your French friend may wish to try them and take a box home for her loved ones. I'll just take the Italian Vogue, thanks, Raj, said Lisa, as she put her money down on the counter. Goodbye. Au revoir, added Dennis. Goodbye, ladies. Do come back soon. They left the shop, giddy with excitement, running away as they carried the exceptionally heavy magazine between them. Raj came out of the shop holding a box of crisps and shouted, You drive a hard bargain, Lisa. I'll throw in another box of roast beef Monster Munch absolutely free. Roger's voice echoed down the street as Dennis and Lisa ran, breathless with excitement. Chapter 11. These high heels are killing me. You did it, said Lisa as they sat on a wall to recover their breath. He really thought I was a girl, exclaimed Dennis. That's the best fun I've had, well, ever. Well, let's go into town then. There should be loads of people there. I'd love to, Lisa, but these high heels are killing me, said Dennis. Not easy being a girl, is it? She said. No, I had no idea your shoes were so painful. How do you wear them every day? He took his shoes off and rubbed his feet. They felt like they had been put in a vise from the metalwork room. Let's just go back, Lisa. I need to get changed and go and meet John up at the park anyway. He'll be wondering where I am. Oh, Lisa couldn't hide her disappointment. Spoil sport. Morning, Lisa. It was Mac, a boy from Lisa's year. He huffed and puffed his way up the street to join them. Mac was one of the fattest boys in the school and endured the unwelcome celebrity that went with it. He has been to Roger's shop as he did every day and was carrying a bag of goodies. "Oh, hi," said Lisa brightly, before whispering to Dennis, "Don't worry, just keep quiet." She raised her voice and said, "So, Mac, have you got anything nice there?" Unlike most of the pupils, Lisa called Mac by his name rather than his nickname, Big Mac and Fries. Sometimes children pass on cruelty unthinkingly, like they would a cold, but Lisa was different. "Oh, it's just my breakfast, Lisa. A couple of bags of Maltesers, a Toblerone, a Bounty, jelly tots, some Skips, 7 bags of Monster Munch. Roger was doing a special offer on those. A box of cream eggs and a can of Diet Coke." "Diet Coke?" asked Lisa. "Yeah, I'm trying to lose some weight," said Mac without irony. "Well, good luck with that," said Lisa, almost without irony. It wouldn't do if we were all thin, "Maybe not. Who's your lovey friend, then?" he asked with a smile as he popped a whole cream egg in his mouth. "Oh, this is my French pen pal, Denise. She's staying with me for a bit." Dennis smiled at Mac uncertainly. Mac stared at him and kept chewing. It was quite a long time before he had demolished enough of the cream egg in his mouth to resume speaking. "Bonjour, Denise," he mumbled through the chocolate. "Bonjour, Mac," replied Dennis, praying the conversation wouldn't continue past the few French words he knew. "Parlez-vous anglais?" Mac asked. "Oui, yes, a little," said Dennis awkwardly. "I had a French pen pal come to stay once. Herb was his name. Nice guy. Smelled a bit, though. He wouldn't take a shower, so in the end we had to hose him down at the end of the garden." He was still chewing. "Herb came into school with me. Are you coming in with Lisa tomorrow?" "I do hope so. I think French girls are gorgeous." As he said this, a little spittle of chocolate egg ran down his chin. Dennis looked at Lisa with panic in his eyes. Yes, of course. Denise is coming in with me tomorrow," said Lisa. "I am?" said Dennis, so shocked he nearly lost his lady voice and his French accent all at once. "Yes, of course you are. We'll see you tomorrow, Mac." "Okay, girls, au revoir," said Mac before he made his way down the street, joyfully swinging his bag of confectionery as he went. "Oh, no," said Dennis. "Oh, yes," said Lisa. "Are you out of your mind? Come on, at least think about it. What if you could fool everyone at school? It would be such a laugh, and it would be our little secret." "Well, I suppose it would be the most amazing thing," said Dennis, a smile broadening across his face. "If the teachers, my friends, my brother, if everyone believed I was a girl." "Well, okay, I'm gonna need some different shoes." But little did Dennis know, he tottered home in his uncomfortable shoes, that he was about to take a tumble. Chapter 12. Another World. "I'm still worried about these shoes," said Dennis. "They're fine. You can't even tell they're extra wides." It was Monday morning, and Lisa and Dennis stood outside the school gates. Dennis was dressed as Denise again, in the orange dress he loved so much. Maybe it was a sequence, or maybe it was his nerves, but he was sweating. "I can't do it," said Dennis. "It'll be fine," assured Lisa in hushed tones, as pupils and teachers made their way to school. "You won't have to say much. No one here can speak French. They barely speak English." Dennis was too tense to laugh at Lisa's joke. Fooling Raj and Mac was one thing, but the whole school? Someone's bound to recognize me. "They won't. You look so different. No one in a million years is going to think you're Dennis." "Not so loud." "Sorry. Look, trust me, no one's going to have a clue as to who you are. But we could just go home instead." Dennis thought for a moment. "No, that would be a boring thing to do." Lisa simply smiled. Dennis smiled back and sashayed into the playground. Lisa had to quicken her pace. "Calm down," said Lisa. "You're a French exchange student, not a supermodel." "Sorry, désolé." Some of the kids stopped and stared. The boys always stared at Lisa anyway because she was so wildly attractive. And the girls liked to check out what she was wearing, even the jealous ones who invented reasons not to like her. But now she was with this new girl not wearing school uniform. There was even more reason to look. Dennis could sense all those eyes on him and loved it. He spotted Dervesh waiting for him outside the classroom, as he always did. Sometimes they would have a quick kick-about before the bell rung. Dervesh scrutinized Dennis for a moment, then looked away. "Wow," thought Dennis, "even my best friend doesn't recognize me." Lisa's classroom was on the top floor of the main school building. Although John was in the same year as Lisa, he wasn't in the same class, and kids 2 years older than Dennis didn't know him, just as he didn't know them, so Dennis had never met most of the people in Lisa's class. In a school of nearly 1,000 pupils, it was very easy to feel anonymous. Unless, of course, you were unutterably gorgeous like Lisa, or had once put your willy in a test tube in the middle of a chemistry lesson like Rory Malone. By the time they reached the classroom, the bell had already rung. They entered just as Lisa's form teacher, Miss Breslaw, was calling the register. Miss Breslaw was a well-liked PE teacher, even though she had quite bad breath. It was school legend that her breath had once broken a window in the staff room, but only the new kids tended to believe it. "Steve Connor? Here. Mac Cribbins? Here. Louise Dale? Yep. Lorna Douglas? Here. And Lisa James? You are late." "Sorry, miss." "Who is this with you?" asked the teacher. "It's my French exchange student, Miss Denise." "I wasn't told anything about this," said Miss Breslaw. "Oh, you were not? Sorry, I did clear it with Hawtree." "Mr. Hawtree, Lisa," chided Miss Breslaw. "Sorry, Mr. Hawtree, the headmaster bloke. I cleared it with him." Miss Breslaw rose from her chair and approached the new arrival. As she scrutinized Dennis, she breathed over him slightly. That does smell bad," thought Dennis. A sort of mixture of cigarettes, coffee, and poo. He held his breath. He could feel himself sweating profusely now. He feared his makeup was going to melt and start collecting in a puddle on the floor. There was silence for a moment. Lisa smiled. Miss Breslaw smiled back. Finally. "Well, that's fine then," she said. "Denise, please take a seat. Welcome to the school." "Merci beaucoup," said Dennis. He and Lisa sat down together. Miss Breslaw continued to read out the register. Lisa reached for Dennis's hand under the desk. She squeezed it softly to say, "Don't worry." Dennis held onto her hand and squeezed it back, just because it felt nice. As they made their way down to the corridor to Lisa's history class, Mac huffed and puffed his way to catch up with them. "Hi, girls." "Oh, hi, Mac," said Lisa. "How's the diet coming along?" "Slowly," said Mac, as he unwrapped a Twix. "Bonjour, Denise," Mac offered nervously. "Bonjour again, Mac," replied Dennis. I was just, you'll probably say no, but if you weren't doing anything after school with Lisa, I was wondering if you might like to come and get an ice cream or two with me." Dennis looked at Lisa with panic. Lisa took over. "You know what, Mac? Denise and I have already made plans for after school, but I know she'd really love to. Maybe next time she's over, okay?" Mac looked disappointed, but not heartbroken. Dennis was impressed by how tactfully Lisa had turned him down on his behalf. "Maybe I'll see you again later then," said Mac. He smiled shyly and overtook them, munching on his Twix and unwrapping a walnut whip as he went. Lisa waited until he was out of earshot before saying, "He really fancies you." "Oh, no," said Dennis. "Don't worry, it's cool," said Lisa. "It's great, in fact. It must mean you're very convincing as a girl." She laughed. "That's not funny." "Yes, it is," she replied, and laughed again. The first lesson of the day, geography, passed without incident, though Dennis didn't think his newfound knowledge of Oxbow Lakes would ever be of use in the adult world, unless, of course, he wanted to be a geography teacher. He got away with it in a second lesson, too. Physics, magnets and iron fillings, fascinating. Dennis hadn't understood this subject as a boy and understood it even less as a girl. He was quickly learning that. It was best to remain silent in class. Remember to cross your legs when you're wearing a dress, and most importantly, don't catch the boys' eyes, as you might be more attractive than you thought. The bell rang again, not a moment too soon. It was break time. I need to go to the loo, said Dennis with a sense of urgency. I do too, said Lisa. Let's go together. Lisa took Dennis's hand and they went through the doors of the girls' toilet and into another world. Boys treated the boys' room as a purely functional place. You did what you needed to do. Maybe wrote something rude about Mr. Hawtrey on the toilet door, and then you left. Inside the girls' room, it was like a party. It was rammed. Dozens of girls competed for space around the mirrors, while others chatted to their neighbors in the next cubicles. Lisa and Dennis joined a queue for one of the toilets. Dennis wasn't used to queuing, but found that he loved it. Listening to all the girls chatter to each other and then bustle around each other seemed so new. Without the presence of boys, girls seemed to behave so differently. They talked and laughed and shared everything. The giggles, the glitter, the glamorous makeup. What a perfect world it was. Lisa touched up her lipstick. She was about to put her makeup bag away when she paused. Do you want me to do yours too? She asked. Oh, yes, please, said Dennis in his best French accent. Let me see, said Lisa, reaching into her bag. Maybe we should try a different lipstick color. I've got a lovely pink one here, Lisa, chirped one of the girls. I just bought this new eyeshadow, said another. Before Dennis could say anything, all these girls were fussing around him, helping to apply lip liner, foundation, blusher, eyeliner, mascara, lipstick, everything. Dennis hadn't been so happy in years. All these girls chatting to him, making him feel special. He was in heaven. Chapter 13. Double French. This is hell, whispered Dennis. Shush, said Lisa. You didn't tell me you had French today. I forgot. You forgot? Said Dennis. Shush, and actually it's double French. Double French? Bonjour, la classe, said Miss Windsor, loudly as she entered. Dennis prayed she wouldn't recognize him from the detention. Bonjour, Mademoiselle Windsor, said the class in unison. Miss Windsor always started the class in French. It gave the false impression that the pupils were all fluent French speakers. Suddenly, she spotted the girl in the orange dress and all the makeup. Miss Windsor couldn't fail to notice her, really. She stood out like a disco ball in the gloom of the classroom. "Et qui êtes-vous?" she inquired. Dennis sat frozen with fear, with a terrible feeling she was about to throw up or pee, or both simultaneously, if that was at all possible. Frustrated by the lack of response, Miss Windsor abandoned the French speaking, as she usually had to after a few seconds of entering the classroom, and she continued in English. "Who are you?" she repeated. Still, Dennis sat in silence. Everyone looked at Lisa. She gulped. "She's my German pen pal, miss," she said. "I thought you said she was French," said Mac innocently, his voice slightly muffled by the Rolo he was chewing. "Oh, yeah, sorry. French pen pal. Thanks, Mac," said Lisa pointedly. She shot him an angry look, and he frowned, looking hurt and baffled. Miss Windsor's face instantly glowed with joy. She hadn't smiled so much since winning her campaign for the school canteen to sell baguettes at lunchtime. "Ah, mais soyez le bienvenu. Quel grand plaisir de vous accueillir dans notre humble salle de classe. C'est tout simplement merveilleux. J'ai tant de questions à vous poser. De quelle région de la France venez-vous? Comment sont les écoles là-bas? Quel est votre passe-temps favori? Que font vos parents dans la vie? S'il vous plaît, venez à tableau et décrivez votre vie en France pour que nous puissions nous en bénéficier. S'élever pourrions tirer qu'on profite d'un entretien avec une vraie franchise telle que vous. Mes devoirs en service de me corriger par de français. Like everyone in the class, and indeed like most people reading this book, except for the exceptionally clever or French ones, Dennis had absolutely no idea what Miss Windsor was going on about. I don't know either. I had to get a friend who passed their French GCSE to translate it for me. Basically, though, Miss Windsor is delighted to have a real French person in her class and is asking lots of questions about life in France. I hope so anyway, unless my friend is playing a horrible joke on me and Miss Windsor is talking about her favorite episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants or something. Oui, said Dennis, hoping that by simply saying yes, he couldn't get himself into too much trouble. Unfortunately, Miss Windsor became even more animated and led Dennis up to the front of the class, still declaiming excitedly in French. Oui, c'est vraiment merveilleux. On devrait faire cela tous les jours. Faire venir des élèves dont le français est la langue maternelle. Ce sont les jours comme celui-ci que je me souviens pourquoi j'ai voulu devenir prof. S'il vous plaît, racontez-nous vos premières impressions de l'Angleterre. Dennis stood still in front of everyone. Lisa looked like she wanted to shout out and help, but couldn't make a sound. Dennis felt as if he was underwater or in a dream. He looked out into the eerie stillness of the room. Everyone stared at him. Nothing moved except Mac's jaw. Rolos are extremely chewy. May I speak in English one moment? Asked Dennis in a tentative French accent. Miss Windsor looked a little surprised and got disappointed. Yes, of course. How can I put this? How you say politely? Poliment, oui. Madame Windsor, continued Dennis, your French accent is very poor, and I'm very sorry, but I cannot understand anything you're saying. Some of the pupils laughed cruelly. A single tear appeared in Miss Windsor's eye and rolled down her cheek. Are you all right, miss? Do you need a tissue? Asked Lisa, before shooting Dennis a furious look. No, I'm perfectly fine. Thank you, Lisa. I've just got something in my eye, that's all. Miss Windsor stood there swaying like she had been shot, but hadn't quite fallen to the floor yet. Why don't you all get on with some private reading? I just need to step outside to get some air for a moment. She tottered uncertainly out of the classroom, as if the bullet was slowly making its way to her heart. She closed the door behind her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from outside the classroom, they heard a huge wail. Ah! Then silence again. Another wail. Ah! A little more silence, and then an even longer one. Ah! The mouths of those pupils who had laughed now closed tight with regret. Lisa looked at Dennis, who bowed his head. He returned to his seat, scraping his high heels along the floor, sorrowfully. A few more seconds passed like hours before Miss Windsor returned to the classroom. Her face was red and puffy from crying. Right, good. Turn to page 58 in your textbooks and answer questions A, B, and C. The pupils all began their work, more silent and compliant than they had ever been before. Would you like a Rolo, miss? Ventured Mac. No one was more aware of the momentary comfort chocolate could give in moments of despair. No, thank you, Mac. I don't want to spoil my lunch. It's bœuf bourguignon. She started crying uncontrollably again. Chapter 14. Silence Like Snow. You complete! Oops, sorry. I know even though real children do swear. You must have been swearing in a children's book. Please forgive me. I really am sorry. You shouldn't swear, Lisa, said Dennis. Why not? Lisa asked angrily. Because a teacher might hear you. I don't care who hears me, said Lisa. How could you do that to poor Miss Windsor? I know, I feel so bad. She's probably weeping in her bourguignon now, said Lisa as they stepped into the busy playground. It was lunchtime, and people stood in groups, chatting and laughing, enjoying their hour of partial freedom. Football games were breaking out everywhere, games that Dennis would normally have joined in with, had he not been wearing a wig, makeup, and an orange sequin dress, and high heels. Maybe I should go and apologize, said Dennis. Maybe, said Lisa. You have to. Let's go and find her in the dining hall. She should be there, unless she jumped in the river Seine. Oh, don't make me feel any worse. As they made their way across the playground, a football rolled past them. Kick it back, love, shouted Darvesh. Dennis couldn't help it. The urge to kick the ball was too strong. Don't be too flash, said Lisa as he ran after the ball. But Dennis couldn't help himself and chased it aggressively. He stopped it neatly, then took a run up to kick it back to his friend. But as he kicked the ball, his high-heeled shoe flew off and toppled backwards. At that moment, his wig slipped back off his head and onto the ground. Denise became Dennis again. Time seemed to slow down. There Dennis was, standing in the middle of the playground in a girl's dress and makeup with one shoe on. Silence spread across the playground like snow. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at him. Dennis? Asked Darvesh incredulously. No, it's Denise, replied Dennis, but the game was up. Dennis felt like he'd looked at Medusa, that Greek mythological monster who turned people to stone. He couldn't move. He looked at Lisa. Her face was dark with worry. Dennis tried to smile. Then out of the silence came a laugh. Then another, then another. Not the kind of laughter that greets something funny, but that cruel, mocking laugh meant to hurt and humiliate. The laughter became louder and louder and louder, and Dennis felt as if the whole world was laughing at him, for all eternity. Ha 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 ha! You boy! Boomed a voice from the school building. The laughter stopped in an instant as the school looked up. It was Mr. Hawtree, the headmaster with the heart of darkness. Me, sir? Asked Dennis with a misguided tone of innocence. Yes, you, the boy in the dress. Dennis looked around in the playground, but he was the only boy wearing a dress. Yes, sir? Come to my office now. Dennis started to walk slowly towards the school building. Everyone watched him to take each uncertain, wobbling step. Lisa picked up the other shoe. Dennis, she called after him. He turned around. I've got your other shoe. Dennis turned back. There's no time for that, boy, bellowed Mr. Hawtree, his little mustache twitching with rage. Dennis sighed and click-clacked his way to the headmaster's office. Everything in the office was black or very dark brown. Leather volumes of school records lined the shelves, along with some old black and white photographs of previous headmasters, whose stern expressions made Mr. Hawtree look almost human. Dennis had never been in this room before, but then it wasn't a room you ever wanted to visit. Seeing inside meant only one thing. You were in deep poo. Are you deranged, boy? No, sir. Then why are you wearing an orange sequin dress? I don't know, sir. You don't know? No, sir. Mr. Hawtree leaned forwards. Is that lipstick? Dennis wanted to cry, but even though Mr. Hawtree could see a tear welling up in Dennis's eye, he continued his assault. Dressing up like that in makeup and high heels. It's disgusting. Sorry, sir. A tear rolled down Dennis's cheek. He caught it with his tongue. That bitter taste again. He hated that taste. I hope you are utterly ashamed of yourself, continued Mr. Hawtree. Are you ashamed of yourself? Dennis hadn't felt ashamed of himself before, but he did now. Yes, sir. I can't hear you, boy. Yes, sir. Dennis looked down for a moment. Mr. Hawtree had black fire in his eyes, and it was hard to keep looking at him. I am really sorry. It's too late for that, boy. You've been skiving off your lessons, upsetting teachers. You're a disgrace. I am not having a degenerate like you in my school. But, sir, you are expelled. But what about the cup final on Saturday, sir? I have to play. There will be no more football for you, boy. Please, sir, I'm begging you. But what about the cup final on Saturday, sir? I have to play. There will be no more football for you, boy. Please, sir, I'm begging you. Said, you are expelled. You must leave the school premises immediately. Chapter 15. There was nothing more to say. Expelled? Yes, Dad. Expelled? Yes. What on earth for? Dennis and his dad were sitting in the lounge. It was 5 p.m., and Dennis had washed the makeup from his face and changed back into his own clothes. He'd hoped this might at least soften the blow. He'd been wrong. Well, Dennis wasn't sure he could find the words. He wasn't sure if he could ever find the words. He went to school dressed up as a girl, shouted John, pointing at Dennis, as if he was an alien who had momentarily fooled everyone by taking human form. He had clearly been listening at the door. You got dressed up as a girl? Asked Dad. Yes, replied Dennis. Have you done this before? A couple of times. A couple of times? Do you like dressing up as a girl? Dad had a look of distress in his eyes that Dennis hadn't seen since his mom left. A bit. Well, either you do or you don't. Deep breath. Well, yes, Dad, I do. It's just fun. What have I done to deserve this? My son likes wearing dresses. I don't, Dad, said John, eager to score a point. I've never put on a dress, not even as a joke, and I never will. Thanks, John, said Dad. That's okay, Dad. Can I go to the freezer and have a Magnum? Yes, said Dad, distracted. You can have a Magnum. Thanks, Dad, said John, glowing with pride as if he had just been given a badge that said #1 son on it. That's it. No more watching the show Small England and whatever it's called, where those two idiots dress up as ladies. It's a bad influence. Yes, Dad. Now go to your room and do your homework, barked Dad. I haven't got any homework. I've been expelled. Oh, yes. Dennis's dad for a moment. Well, just go to your room then. Dennis passed John, who was sitting on the stairs, gleefully enjoying his Magnum. He lay on his bed in silence, thinking how everything had been ruined simply by putting on a dress. Dennis took out the photograph he had saved from the bonfire of him, John, and Mum at the beach. It was all he had left now. He gazed at the picture. He would give anything to be on that beach again with ice cream round his mouth, holding onto his mum's hand. Maybe he stared long enough into it he would disappear back into that happy scene. But suddenly, the picture was torn out of his hands. Dad held it up. What's this? It's just a picture, Dad. But I burnt them all. I don't want any reminders of that woman in the house. I'm sorry, Dad. It just floated out of the bonfire onto a hedge. Well, now it's going in the bin, like your magazine. Please, Dad, don't. Let me keep it. Dennis snatched the photograph back. How dare you? Give it to me now, shouted Dad. Dennis had never seen him so angry. He tentatively handed the picture back. Have you got any others? No, Dad. That was the only one, I promise. I don't know what to believe anymore. I blame your mother for all this dressing up business anyways. She was always too soft on you. Dennis was silent. There was nothing more to say. He carried on looking forward. He heard the door slam. An hour went by, or was it a day or a month or a year? Dennis wasn't sure anymore. The present was somewhere he didn't want to be, and he couldn't see a future. His life was over, and he was only 12. The doorbell rang, and a few moments later, Dennis heard Dervesh's voice downstairs, then his dad's. He's not allowed out of his room, I'm afraid, Dervesh. But I really need to see him, Mr. Sims. It's not possible, I'm afraid. Not today. And if you see that stupid girl Lisa, who John says put him up to this dressing up thing, tell her to never show her face again. Can you tell him I'm still his friend? Whatever happened, he's still my friend. Can you tell him that? I'm not talking to him at the moment, Darvesh. It's best you go. Dennis heard the door shut and then went to the window. He could see Darvesh walking slowly down the drive, his patka getting wet in the rain. Darvesh turned back and caught sight of Dennis up at his bedroom window. He smiled sadly, giving a little wave. Dennis put his hand up to wave back. Then Darvesh disappeared out of sight. Dennis spent the whole day holed up in his room hiding from his dad. Just as night fell, Dennis heard a quiet tapping on the window. It was Lisa. She was standing on a ladder trying to talk in a hushed tone as possible. What do you want? Asked Dennis. I need to speak to you. I'm not allowed to speak to you anymore. Just let me in for a minute, please. Dennis opened the window and Lisa climbed in. He sat back down on the bed. I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm really sorry. I thought it would be fun. I didn't think it would end up like this. She put a hand on his shoulder, stroking his hair. No one had stroked Dennis's hair for years. His mom used to do it every night when she tucked him into bed. Somehow, it made him want to cry. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Lisa whispered. I mean, why are girls allowed to wear dresses and boys aren't? It doesn't make any sense. It's okay, Lisa. I mean, expelled? It's just not fair. Carl Bates didn't even get expelled for mooning the school inspectors. And I'm going to miss the football final. I know. I'm sorry. Look, I never meant all this to happen. It's just crazy. I'm going to get Hawtrey to have you back at the school. Lisa, I am. I don't know how yet, but I promise. Lisa hugged him and kissed him for a moment, just shy of his lips. It was a glorious kiss. How could be anything but glorious? After all, her mouth was shaped like a kiss. Dennis, I promise. Chapter 16, With or Without the Dress. It wasn't until the weekend that Dennis was allowed out of the house. Dad had locked the computer away in a cupboard, and Dennis was forbidden to watch the television, so he had missed a number of episodes of Trisha. Finally, on Saturday morning, Dad relented, and Dennis was let out for the day. He wanted to go around to Darvish's flat to wish him luck for the final. On the way, he stopped off at Raj's to get something to eat. He only had 13p to spend, as his pocket money had been frozen indefinitely. Raj greeted him as warmly as he always did. "Ah, my favorite customer!" exclaimed Raj. "Hi, Raj," said Dennis, mutedly. "Have you got anything for 13p? Let me think. Half a chomp bar?" Dennis smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in a week. "It's nice to see you smile, Dennis. Lisa told me what happened at school. I'm very sorry." "Thanks, Raj. I must say you had me fooled, though. Very good you look, Denise. Ha ha. But I mean, being expelled for putting a dress? It's absurd. You haven't done anything wrong, Dennis. You mustn't be made to feel like you have." "Thanks, Raj. Please help yourself to some free confectionery." "Wow, thanks." Dennis's eyes lit up. "To the value of 22p. Watching Darvesh pack his football kit for the final was harder than Dennis had imagined. Not being able to play was the worst part of being expelled. "I'm gutted you're not in the team today, Dennis," said Darvesh as he sniffed his socks to check they were clean. "You're a star striker." "You guys will be okay," said Dennis supportively. "We don't stand a chance without you, and you know it. That Hawtrey's so evil, expelling you. Well, it's done now, isn't it? There's nothing I can do." "There must be something. It's so unfair. It's only dressing up. It doesn't bother me, you know. You're still Dennis, my mate, with or without the dress." Dennis was really touched and wanted to hug Darvesh, but being 12-year-old boys, hugging wasn't really something they did. "Those high heels must have been uncomfortable, though," said Darvesh. "They're murder," said Dennis, laughing. "Here's your pre-match snack," said Darvesh's mom as she entered the room carrying a tray piled high with food. "What's all this, Mom?" moaned Darvesh. "I made you a little masala, some rice, dal, a chapati, samosas, followed by a waltz vignetta. I can't eat all this now, Mom. I'll throw up. The game is in an hour." "You need strength, boy, doesn't he, Dennis?" "Well, yes," Dennis hesitated. "I suppose." "You tell him, Dennis. He won't listen to me. You know, I'm so sad you're not playing today." "Thanks. It's been a horrible week," replied Dennis. "You poor boy, expelled just for not wearing the correct school uniform. Darvesh never told me. What exactly were you wearing?" It really doesn't matter, Mom," said Darvesh. He attempted to hurry her out of his room. "No, it's okay," said Dennis. "I don't mind her knowing." "Knowing what?" asked Darvesh's mom. "Well," Dennis paused before continuing in a serious tone.
I went to school wearing an orange sequin dress." There was a silence for a moment. "Oh, Dennis," she said, "what a terrible thing to do." Dennis paled. "I mean, orange is really not your color, Dennis," she continued. "With your light hair, you would probably look better in a pastel color like pink or baby blue." Thank you," said Dennis. "My pleasure. You can come to me any time for style advice. Now come on, Darvesh, eat up. I'll just go and start the car," she said as she left the room. "Your mom's cool," said Dennis. "I love her." "I love her too, but she's nuts," said Darvesh with a laugh. "So, are you going to come and watch the game then? Everyone will be there." "I don't know. I know it'll be a bit weird for you, but come with us. It won't be the same without you. We need you there, Dennis. If only to cheer us on, please." "I don't know if I should," said Dennis. "Please." Chapter 17. Maudlin Street. Dennis felt sick as the referee's whistle blew for the start of the game. Pupils, parents, and teachers were all grouped excitedly around the pitch. Darvesh's mom looked like she was going to explode with excitement. She had elbowed her way to the front of the crowd. "Come on, football!" she kept shouting with joyful anticipation. Mr. Hawtree was next to Darvesh's mom. He was sitting on a strange contraption that was half walking stick and half seat. The fact that the headmaster was the only person made him look very important, even if what he was sitting on looked bum-numbingly uncomfortable. Dennis pulled up the hood on his anorak so that Mr. Hawtree wouldn't spot him. He didn't even go to the school anymore, and the headmaster still terrified him. Dennis was surprised to see Lisa standing in the crowd with Mac. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I didn't know you liked football." "Well, it is the final," said Lisa casually. "I just wanted to come and support like everyone else." "I feel a bit embarrassed now, Dennis," said Mac tentatively. "Asking you out on a date and everything." "Oh, don't worry, Mac," said Dennis. "I was flattered in a way." "Well, you did look very pretty as a girl," said Mac. Lisa burst out laughing. "Prettier than Lisa?" joked Dennis. "Oi, watch it, you," said Lisa, smiling. Out of the corner of his eye, Dennis saw Miss Windsor making her way across the pitch to take her place in the crowd. "Have you apologized to Miss Windsor yet, Dennis?" asked Lisa, with a tone that suggested she knew the answer already. Not yet, Lisa, but I will," squirmed Dennis. "Dennis," said Lisa sharply, "I will." "You did really upset her," added Mac as he somehow managed to put a whole Carmack into his mouth. "I saw her in Rajesh's shop yesterday, and she cried when she saw a bottle of Orangina." "Yeah, all right, I will. I just can't do it right now, can I?" "Not with Hawtree sitting right there," said Dennis, concealing himself behind Mac's bulk and turning his attention to the match. The opposition was Maudlin Street. They had lifted the trophy every year for the last 3 years. It was a notoriously rough school, and their team played dirty, going in really hard for tackles, elbowing opponents, even once poking a referee in the eye. Dennis's school, or rather ex-school, had never won, and all most people were expecting of them was a heroic defeat, especially now that their best player had been expelled. 2-4, Maudlin Street got off to a strong start, scoring in the first few minutes. One of their team was given the yellow card for administering a Chinese burn to one of the defenders before they scored another goal. Then another. Darvesh ran up to Gareth. "We don't stand a chance. We need Dennis." "He's expelled, Darvesh. Come on, we can win this without him." "No, we can't, and you know it." Gareth ran off after the ball. Another goal from Maudlin Street. 4-0. This was turning into a massacre. There was a lull for a moment as Darvesh's mum and Miss Windsor stretched off one of the school's team. One of the Maudlin Street center forwards had accidentally stamped on his leg. Darvesh shouted at Gareth, "Please, Gareth, do something." Gareth sighed and ran over to Mr. Hawtree. "What do you want, boy?" This is a disaster. You're bringing shame on the school, snarled the headmaster. I'm sorry, sir, but you expelled our best player. We don't have a chance without Dennis. That boy is not playing. Garrett's face fell. But, sir, we need him. I'm not having that dress-wearing disgrace of a boy representing the school. Please, sir? Play on, boy, said Mr. Hawtrey with a dismissive wave of his hand. Gareth ran back on the pitch. Within moments he was lying in agony on the wet grass, after one of the Magdalen Street's forwards booted the ball straight at his groin. The striker then regained possession of the ball and hammered it into the goal. 5-0. You know, you should really let the boy play, Mr. Headmaster, said Darvish's mum, urgently. I'd be grateful if you minded your own business, madam, snapped Mr. Hawtrey in reply. Come on, Mac, said Lisa bossily. I need a hand. Where are you guys going? Asked Dennis. You'll see, replied Lisa with a wink. She marched off across the playing fields with Mac trailing behind. The Magdalen Street supporters once again howled with delight. Another goal, 6-0. Dennis closed his eyes. He couldn't watch anymore. Chapter 18. 1,000 Smiles. Where the hell are they? Yelled Mr. Hawtrey at no one in particular. The second half was about to begin, and Magdalen Street were all waiting on the pitch, eager to finish off their demolition job. The school's team was nowhere to be seen. Had they run away? Then, suddenly, Lisa stepped out of the changing room and held the door open. First, Gareth ran out wearing a gold lame ball gown. Then, Darvesh followed in a yellow polka dot frock. Then the defenders were right behind in matching red cocktail dresses. The rest of the team followed in a variety of outfits from Lisa's wardrobe. And finally, Dennis came out of the dressing room in a pink bridesmaid's dress. There was a huge cheer from the crowd. Dennis looked at Lisa and smiled. Go get 'em, kid, she said. As they ran onto the pitch, Mr. Hawtrey bellowed at Gareth. What on earth do you think you're doing, boy? You expelled Dennis for wearing a dress, but you can't expel us all, sir, he shouted back triumphantly. All the boys in the team lined up defiantly behind their captain, striking poses like they were dancers in a Madonna video. The crowd went wild. This is a disgrace, bellowed Mr. Hawtrey. He stormed off, angrily brandishing his walking stick seat thing. Gareth smiled at Dennis. Come on, boys, let's do it, said Gareth. The bemused referee blew his whistle before it fell out of his mouth. Within seconds, Dennis had scored a goal. The Magdalen Street team were in shock. They were still 6-1 down, but Dennis and his teammates were back in the game. Woo! Shouted Darvesh as he hitched up his skirt and weaved round the defender. Laughing, Dennis scored again. He was on his way to a hat trick, and he was 100 times happier than he had ever been. He was doing the two things he loved most at once, playing football and wearing a dress. Then Darvesh scored, sliding around the pitch and adding a large grass stain to his frock as he sneaked the ball past the Magdalen Street goalie. 6-3. My boy in the yellow polka dot dress has scored, shouted Darvesh's mum. They were on fire. Dennis set up a fantastic cross for Gareth, who just had to tap it on into the net. 6-4. Gareth, being Gareth, celebrated like this goal would be replayed forever on Match of the Day, doing 3 victory laps of the pitch and hitching up his gold lame ball gown as he ran. The crowd laughed and cheered. Then another goal followed, and another. 6-6. Now there were only a few more minutes of the game to play. One more to go, and they'd have done it. Come on, Dennis, shouted Lisa. You can do it. Dennis looked over at her and smiled. It would be really cool if I scored now, he thought, especially in front of Lisa, my future wife. But at that moment, Dennis fell to the ground in pain. The crowd gasped. One of the Magdalen Street strikers had nobbled him, kicked him right in the shin when he didn't even have the ball. Dennis lay there in the mud, holding his leg in agony. The referee had seen nothing. He's putting it on, ref, protested the Magdalen Street boy. The crowd booed. Dennis was trying really hard not to cry. He opened his eyes and his vision swam. Lying there, grass pressing into his cheek, he peered up at the crowd. Through the tears, he glimpsed a red-checked jacket that looked very familiar. And then the red-checked jacket turned into a man. And then the man shouted in a deep voice that was even more familiar. "Oi, what's going on here?" Dad. Dennis couldn't believe it. Dad had never come to see him play for the school before. And now here Dennis was lying on the ground with tears in his eyes, wearing a dress. He was going to be in so much trouble. But Dad looked at Dennis and smiled. "Oi, ref," he shouted. "That kid kicked my son." Dennis rose to his feet, his legs still glowing with pain, but a warm feeling spreading through him. He steadied himself, then smiled back over at Dad. "You okay?" asked Darvesh. "Yeah," said Dennis. "Come on, son," shouted Dennis's dad, really getting into it now. "You can do it." "I called him at halftime," said Darvesh. "After what you said about your dad never seeing you play in a match, I thought you wouldn't want him to miss this." "Thanks, mate," said Dennis. Whenever he thought Darvesh couldn't surprise him anymore, couldn't be a better friend, he went ahead and did it. Gareth tackled the ball of one of the Maudlin Street boys. Darvesh ran up the outside, and Gareth passed to him. Maudlin Street charged towards Darvesh, and he passed back to Gareth. Gareth panicked for a moment, then passed to Dennis, who weaved straight past the defense before booting it right over the goalie's head and into the back of the net. The keeper didn't stand a chance. 6-7. The final whistle blew. It was all over. "Yes!" shouted the crowd. "Go on, my son!" shouted Dennis's dad. Dennis looked over and smiled. For a moment he thought he saw John's face in the crowd, but he couldn't be sure, as everything seemed to be a blur in all the excitement. Gareth was first to go up and hug Dennis. Darvesh was next. Within moments they were all hugging excitedly, celebrating their victory. The school had never even got the semis before, and now they'd won the cup. Dad couldn't contain his excitement, ran onto the pitch. He scooped Dennis up into his arms and sat him on his shoulders. "This is my son! This is my boy!" shouted Dad, helpless with pride. The crowd erupted with cheers again. Dennis smiled 1,000 smiles. He looked down at Gareth, Darvesh, and the rest of the team, all wearing their dresses. "There's just one problem," Dennis thought. "I don't feel that different anymore." But he kept that thought to himself. Chapter 19. Dragged in the Mud. The Maudlin Street team and their supporters stomped off muttering things like "fix," "rematch," and "bunch of woosters." Gareth passed the gleaming silver cup to Darvesh to hold. The crowd cheered. My son, the footballer, and yellow is so your color," exclaimed Darvesh's mom. Darvesh looked over at his mom and held the cup up to her. "This is for you, Mom," he said. She pulled out one of her tissues and wiped a tear from her eye. Darvesh then passed the cup to Dennis. At that moment, Mr. Hawtrey reappeared. "Not you, boy." "But, sir," implored Dennis, "you are still expelled from this school." The crowd started booing. Mac took a toffee bonbon out of his mouth momentarily and joined in. Even Miss Windsor allowed herself a little French Revolutionary boo. "Silence!" And there was silence. Even the adults were scared. "But I thought," said Dennis. "Whatever you thought, boy, was wrong," snarled Mr. Hawtrey. "Now get off the school premises before I call the police." "But, sir, now." Dad waded in. "You're a right idiot, you," he said. Mr. Hawtrey was taken aback. No one had spoken to him like that before. "My boy just won the cup for your school." "My son Darvesh helped too," added Darvesh's mom. "Dennis was expelled, though," said Mr. Hawtrey with a sickening smug smile. "You know what? I've got a good mind to shove that cup up your what's-it," said Dad. "Oh dear, he's more embarrassing than me," muttered Darvesh's mom. "Look, Mr. Sims, and he's Dennis Sims. My son, Dennis Sims. Remember that name. He'll be a famous footballer one day. You mark my words. And I'm his dad, and I couldn't be prouder. Come on, son, let's go home, said Dad as he took Dennis's hand and led him home across the pitch. Dennis's dress dragged in the mud, and he held Dad's hand tightly as he sloshed through the puddles. Chapter 20. Blouse and Skirt. I'm sorry there's mud all over this, said Dennis as he handed back the bridesmaid dress to Lisa. It was later that afternoon, and they were sat on the floor in her bedroom. Dennis, I'm sorry. I tried, said Lisa. Lisa, you were amazing. Thanks to you, I got to play in the final. That's what really mattered. I guess I just need to find another school that might take me. The boy in the dress. Maudlin Street, maybe, said Lisa with a smile. Dennis laughed. They sat in silence for a moment. I am going to miss you, he said. I'm going to miss you too, Dennis. It's going to be sad not seeing you at school, but we can still get together at the weekends, can't we? I want to. Thank you for everything, Lisa. What have you got to thank me for? I got you expelled. Dennis paused. Lisa, I want to thank you for opening my eyes. Lisa looked down shyly. Dennis had never seen her look like that before. Well, thank you, Dennis. That's the loveliest thing anyone has ever said to me. Dennis smiled, and his confidence grew for a moment. And I have to tell you something, Lisa. Something I wanted to tell you for ages. Yes? I am completely, madly what? But he just couldn't say it. Sometimes it's hard to say the things you feel. I'll tell you when I'm older. Promise, Dennis? I promise. I hope he does. We all have someone who, when we are near them, our heart feels like it is in the sky. But even when you're grown up, sometimes it's hard to say the things you feel. Lisa ran through Dennis's hair. He shut his eyes so he could feel it more. On the way home, Dennis walked past Rogers' shop. He wasn't going to stop, but Raj spotted him and came out of the shop to see him. Dennis, you look so sad. Come in. What on earth is the matter, young man? Dennis told him what had happened at the football match, and Raj shook his head in disbelief. You know the irony, Dennis? Proclaimed Raj. Those people who are so quick to judge, be they teachers or politicians or religious leaders or whatever, are normally up to far worse themselves. Maybe, murmured Dennis, half listening. Not maybe, Dennis, it's true. You know that headmaster of yours? What's his name? Mr. Hawtrey. That's it, Mr. Hawtrey. I could swear there's something strange going on with him. Strange? Asked Dennis, intrigued. I don't know for sure, continued Raj. But you see, he used to come in here every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning for his telegraph. Same time every week on the dot. And then after a while, he stopped coming and his sister came instead. At least he said it was his sister. What do you mean? Well, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something very peculiar about that woman. Really? What? Come tomorrow at 7 a.m. and see for yourself. Raj tapped his nose. Now, do you want the other half of the chomp bar? I can't seem to shift it. It's very early for a Sunday, complained Lisa. It's 6:45. I should be in bed. I'm sorry, said Dennis. So Hawtrey's got a sister, so what? Well, Raj said there was something funny about her. Look, we'd better hurry up if we want to be there for 7. They quickened their pace along the cold, misty streets. The ground was damp from an overnight storm. No one else was up yet, and the absence of people gave the town an eerie feel. Lisa was, of course, wearing heels, though Dennis wasn't on this particular occasion. All that could be heard was the click-clacking of her heels down the street. Then, out of the gray mist, stepped a very tall woman dressed in black. She entered the shop. Dennis checked his watch. 7 o'clock, precisely. That must be her, whispered Dennis. They tiptoed over to the shop window and peered through the glass. This woman was indeed buying a copy of the Sunday Telegraph. So she's buying a newspaper, so what? Whispered Lisa. Shush, shushed Dennis. We haven't had a proper look at her yet. Raj spotted Dennis and Lisa through the glass and gave them a big wink as the woman turned around. They retreated behind a bin as she made her way out of the shop. Neither Dennis nor Lisa could believe what they saw. It was Mr. Hawtrey's sister. It must have been his twin. She even had a mustache. The figure looked about to see no one was around and then hurried down the street. Dennis and Lisa looked at each other and smiled. "Gotcha!" "Mr. Hawtrey?" shouted Dennis. The figure turned and said in a low, manly voice, "Yes?" before he immediately raising his voice for a ladylike tone. I mean no." Dennis and Lisa approached. "I'm not Mr. Hawtrey. No, definitely not. I'm his sister, Doris." "Come off it, Mr. Hawtrey," said Lisa. "We may be kids, but we're not stupid." "And why have you got a mustache?" accused Dennis. "I have a very slight facial hair problem," was the high-pitched reply. Dennis and Lisa just laughed. "Oh, it's you, the boy in the dress," snarled Mr. Hawtrey in a low voice. He knew the game was up now. "Yes," replied Dennis, "the boy you expelled for wearing a dress. And here you are, wearing one yourself." "It's not a dress, boy. It's a blouse and skirt," snapped Mr. Hawtrey. "Nice heels, sir," said Lisa. Mr. Hawtrey's eyes bulged. "What do you want from me?" he demanded. "I want Dennis reinstated at the school," demanded Lisa. "Impossible, I'm afraid. Not wearing the correct school uniform is a very serious offense," said Mr. Hawtrey with headmasterly confidence. "Well, what if it got out that you like dressing like this?" asked Lisa. "You'd be a laughing stock." "Are you trying to blackmail me?" Mr. Hawtrey asked severely. "Yes," said Lisa and Dennis simultaneously. "Oh," said Mr. Hawtrey, suddenly deflated. "Well, seems like I have no choice then. Come back to school on Monday morning in correct school uniform, boy. But you need to swear that you will never mention this to anyone," added Mr. Hawtrey sternly. "I swear," said Dennis. Mr. Hawtrey looked at Lisa. She was silent for a moment, enjoying the power she still had over him. She smiled wider than a grand piano. Okay, I swear too," she said eventually. "Thank you. Oh, and another thing I almost forgot," said Dennis. "Boy?" "Yeah, let's have proper footballs allowed in the playground at break time from now on," continued Dennis confidently. "It's no good playing with tennis balls." "Anything else?" roared Mr. Hawtrey. "No, I think that's everything," said Dennis. "If we think of anything else, we'll let you know," added Lisa. "Thank you so much," said Mr. Hawtrey sarcastically. "You know, it's not always easy being a headmaster, shouting at people all the time, telling them off, expelling them. I need to dress up like this to unwind." "Well, that's cool, but why don't you try being a bit nicer to everyone?" asked Lisa. "Utterly absurd idea," replied Mr. Hawtrey. "See you on Monday then, miss," said Dennis, laughing. "Sorry, I mean sir." Mr. Hawtrey turned and began to run home as fast as his heels would let him. Just as he was about to disappear around the corner, he kicked his shoes off, picked them up, and started sprinting. Dennis and Lisa laughed so loudly they woke up the whole street. Chapter 21. Big Hairy Hands. "What are you wearing that for?" asked Dad. It was Monday morning, and he was staring at Dennis, who was sitting at the kitchen table, eating his Rice Krispies, and for the first time in a week, wearing his school uniform. "I'm going back to school today, Dad," replied Dennis. "The headmaster has changed his mind about me being expelled." "He has? Why? He's a nasty piece of work, that man." "It's a long story. I suppose he thought that the dressing up wasn't so bad after all." "Well, he's right. It isn't. You know, I was very proud of you out there on that pitch. You were very brave." "That boy really did kick me pretty hard," said Dennis. "I don't just mean that. I mean going out there in a dress. That was brave. I wouldn't be able to do it. You're a great lad, really. You are. It hasn't been easy for you since your mom left. I've been very unhappy and know sometimes I've taken it out on you and your brother, and I am sorry for that." "It's okay, Dad. I still love you." Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the photograph he had taken of his family at the beach. I didn't have the heart to burn it, son. It's just too painful for me to look at photos like this. I loved your mom very much, you see. I still love her now, after everything. Being a grown-up is complicated like that. But it's your photo, Dennis. You keep it safe. Dad's hand trembled as he passed the charred photograph back to his son. Dennis looked at it again and slid it carefully in his breast pocket. Thanks, Dad, he said. All right, said John as he entered the room. You coming back to school then? Yeah, replied Dennis. That stupid headmaster changed his mind, added Dad. Well, I think you're very brave going back, said John as he put some stale slices of bread in the toaster. Some of the older kids might pick on you. Dennis looked down at the lino. Well, you need to look after your brother then, don't you, John? Said Dad. Yeah, I will. If anyone has a go, I'll have a go back. You're my brother and I'll protect you. Good boy, John, said Dad, trying not to cry. I've got to go, boys. I've got to drive a load of bog rolls to Bradford. He walked over to the door and then turned back for a moment. I am very proud of you both, you know. Whatever you do, you'll always be my boys. You're all I've got. He couldn't quite look at them as he spoke, and then he quickly left, shutting the door behind him. Dennis and John looked at each other. It was as if an ice age had thawed, and the sun was shining for the first time in a million years. It's a shame you missed the final, said Dennis as they walked to school together. Yeah, said John. I just had to, hang around outside the leisure center with my mates. That's funny. I thought for a moment I saw your face in the crowd, but I suppose it must have been someone else. John coughed. Well, actually, I sort of was there. I knew it, said Dennis, smiling. Why didn't you let on? I was going to, spluttered John, but I just couldn't run into the pitch at the end and do all that hugging stuff. I wanted to, honest, but I don't know. I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad you were there, even if you didn't tell me. You don't need to be sorry. Thanks, sorry. They walked in silence for a moment. What I still don't get, though, ventured John, is why you did it. Did what? Put on that dress in the first place. I don't know really, said Dennis, a puzzled look crossing his face. I suppose because it was fun? Fun? Said John. Well, when we were younger and we used to run around the garden pretending to be Daleks or Spider-Man or whatever. Yeah, it felt like that, like playing, said Dennis confidently. I used to like playing, said John almost to himself as they continued down the street. What the, said John as he and Dennis entered Roger's shop to find Raj resplendent in a bright green sari and wig and fall makeup. Morning, boys, said Raj in a ridiculously high-pitched voice. Morning, Raj, said Dennis. Oh no, I'm not Raj, said Raj. Raj is not here today, but he has left me in charge of the shop. I'm his Aunt Indira. Raj, we know it's you, said John. Oh dear, said Raj, dejected. I've been up since dawn putting this look together. What gave it away so quickly? The stubble, said Dennis. The Adam's apple, added John. Those big hairy hands, continued Dennis. All right, I get the point, said Raj hurriedly. I was hoping I'd get my own back by fooling you, Dennis, after you played that trick on me. Well, you very nearly did fool me, Raj, said Dennis kindly. You were incredibly convincing as a woman. He smiled, looking admiringly at Raj's outfit. So where did you get the sari? It's my wife's. Luckily, she's a very big lady, so it's a good fit. Raj lowered his voice for a moment and looked around so no one else could hear. She doesn't know I've got it on, so if you see her, it's best not to mention it. It's okay, Raj, we won't, said Dennis. Thank you so much. Good tip about your headmaster, Mr. Hawtrey, yes? Said Raj with a wink of his eyeliner-caked eye. Oh, yes, thank you, Raj, said Dennis, winking back. What's that about Hawtrey? Asked John. Oh, nothing. He just likes to read the Sunday Telegraph, that's all, said Dennis. Well, we'd better go. We're going to be late, said John, tugging his brother's arm. Just this bag of quavers, please, Raj. Buy 2 bags of quavers, I give you 1 extra, 1 free, said Raj with great delight at his new special offer. All right then, said John, that sounds good. He picked up another bag of quavers and gave it to Dennis. Raj then produced a single quaver from a bag. And there is your free quaver. So that's 2 bags of quavers, 58p. Thank you so much. John looked confused. Good luck today, Dennis, exclaimed Raj as the 2 boys left his shop. I'll be thinking of you. Chapter 22. One Thing Left to Do. Entering the school gates, Dennis spotted Dervesh waiting for him holding a brand new football. "Do you fancy a kickabout?" asked Dervesh. "My mom bought me this yesterday. We're allowed to play with proper footballs in the playground now," he added, bouncing the ball triumphantly. "Really?" said Dennis. "I wonder why Hotry changed his mind." "Do you want to play then?" asked Dervesh eagerly. At that moment, Dennis saw Miss Windsor parking her yellow Citroën 2CV. It wasn't so much a car, more a dustbin on wheels, but it was French and she loved it. "I'll catch up with you at break, okay?" said Dennis. "Okay, Dennis, we'll have a proper game then," replied Dervesh, doing keepy-uppies as he made his way to the classroom. "John, wait here a moment, will you?" said Dennis. "There's one thing I still need to do." Dennis took a deep breath. "Miss?" he called out. John hung back a little. "Oh, it's you," said Miss Windsor frostily. "What do you want?" "I just wanted to say I'm really sorry." "I am. I'm sorry. I really shouldn't have said that. You didn't have a good French accent." Miss Windsor remained silent and Dennis squirmed, trying to think of something else to say. "Because you do. You actually have a really good French accent, Miss Mademoiselle. It sounds like you're actually a proper French person." "Well, thank you, Dennis, or merci beaucoup, Dennis, as I would say in Francais," said Miss Windsor, warming a little. "Well done on Saturday. Wonderful match. You actually looked very convincing in a dress, you know." "Thank you, miss." "Actually, I'm glad you're here," said Miss Windsor. "You see, I've written a play." "Oh, yes," said Dennis with a trepidation. "It's a play about the life of Joan of Arc, the 15th century French religious martyr." "Wow, that sounds, none of the girls want to play her. Anyway, I thought it would be fascinating to have a boy play her, as she, of course, was a girl who wore boys' clothing. Dennis, I think it would make a very memorable Joan." Dennis looked to his brother for help, but John just smirked. "Well, it certainly sounds interesting." "Wonderful. Let's meet up at break time and discuss it over a pain au chocolat." "Okay, miss," said Dennis, trying to hide his dread. He walked away slowly and quietly, as you might retreat from a bomb that may be about to go off. "Oh, I should have said, the play is entirely in French. Au revoir," she called after him. "Au revoir," he called back in the most un-French accent he could manage. "Now that I can't wait to see," said John, laughing. As they walked off together towards the main school building, John put his arm around him. Dennis smiled. The world felt different. The end. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. See you next time.